Alderman Jettie, don't say anything bad. All right.
Okay.
It's 7 o'clock.
It is. I'm going to call the meeting of the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee to order. Today is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It is 7 p.m. and we are in the Aldermanic Chamber. That's where we are. Could you please call the roll?
Alderman at large or Alderwoman at large, Shoshana Kelly, Chairwoman.
I'm here.
Alderman at large, Ben Clemens, Vice Chair.
Here.
Alderman Tyler Govea.
Here.
Alderman Thomas Lopez is not. Alderman Tebow is here. We also have Alderman Klee and Alderman Jettie, Mayor Donchis, and Director of Administrative Affairs, Tim Cummings.
Administrative Affairs.
What? And Bob Mack from the Welfare Department.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a period for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak during public comment? Okay. Communications
There are none.
and interviews.
We have Downtown Improvement Committee, Philip Sconsis, alternate to member, term to expire February 14th, 2026, 14 Ashland Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064.
If you haven't done this before, come up and sit in the horseshoe with us when we interview, please.
How are you?
And if you can, state your name when you speak for the transcribers, they'll really appreciate that.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm nominating Philip Sconsis for the position of Downtown Improvement Committee. Now, Philip has been an alternate on that committee for a couple of years now, and we're just seeking to move him to a full member. Now, everybody I know is familiar with Philip. He's the owner of Sconsis Fine Jewelry and Home Decor, and he and his family have operated that store on Main Street for 111 years. He's very interested and involved in the downtown, and therefore is a great nominee for this position. And I'm also nominating him for the Board of Directors for the Performing Arts Center, or the Board of Trustees. But why don't, if you would like, Madam Chair, we'll just discuss the first thing now, and then when we get to the...
If it's okay with the committee, I don't mind asking him questions around Downtown Improvements Committee and then just asking him questions around that.
Now I've also nominated Philip for the Performing Arts Center Board of Trustees. Philip has been very involved and very supportive of that project over a long period of time. Most importantly, Philip has been involved with raising private funds for the use of the center, and has worked with a number of large donors. In fact, it was Philip that over a period of time persuaded the $1 million anonymous donor to make that very generous contribution to the center, and as a result, we have the name Nashua Center for the Arts, as opposed to, the such and such a bank center or the so-and-so center. We have the very community-oriented name of Downtown Nashua Center for the Arts. And so, it's with great enthusiasm that I appoint him to that board, because I know he will do a great job there, and within, a few doors, he'll be able to keep a close eye on what's going on and work with Peter Lally and Spectacle to make sure that we have a good variety of performers. And Philip has exquisite taste, so he knows music, I think, well enough to be able to be a contributor as far as programming as well. So on both committees, I know Philip will do a great job, and I look forward to working with him on both of those.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Philip. He can tell you a little bit about himself to the extent you already don't know it, and can tell you a little bit about why he's interested in the Downtown Improvement Committee and the Performing Arts Center Board of Trustees.
Hi, Philip Sconsis. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'm very excited to, it was a big weekend here in downtown. It's been a really exciting year for us. I have been involved in my family business since 1974. I was trying to do the math as I was driving down here today. And I have sat on, I started out being attending Heart of Downtown Nashua meetings, and then it morphed into Destination Downtown, where I served as president for 5 years, 5 long years. And then from there, we applied to become a Main Street program, which I was heavily involved in that. That was during the Bernie Streeter mayoral time, and we did not win. I was just telling this lovely lady that we did not become a Main Street because they said we were too equipped. We didn't need them as much. And at that point, somebody said to Mayor Streeter that we are a great American downtown and we should work on our own. And he said, well, there's the name of our new organization, Great American Downtown, which I've been involved with. During my tenure, I have chaired the Holiday Stroll twice. I was the chairperson for the Taste of Downtown Nashua for about a decade. I also had the honor of chairing the Millennium, the 2000 celebration on Main Street as well. So I have a lot of commitment to this area. I love it. My building is here. My family history is here. I tell everybody that downtown Nashua is where my family, we were all born in the downtown hospitals, and my parents met at 173 Main Street. My father was a shoe shine boy, and my mother had her penny loafer shine there. So I have years of history there, and I'm happy to see the direction it's going. I'm very excited about the Center for the Arts, but I'm also very excited about being a part of the Downtown Improvement Committee, because I think it's something that is very valued, and really we've done some really great things, and I'm happy to be a part. So thank you for hearing me and having me.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just, before I ask a question or make a comment, I just want to say that Alderman Lopez was here at 7:04, or 7:03. I know that clock's wrong. Mr. Scott says, thank you for coming. After hearing all that, I'm not sure you're qualified for this. Just kidding, of course. So my question was, how'd it go on Saturday?
It was great. It was very well attended. There was a lot of enthusiasm. The place looks amazing. The donors that were there were happy, were pleased with the way it came out. It was a very, very positive day. And then I did head back to the store, and I was happy to tell you that all afternoon it was nice to see the amount of people walking by the store, coming in, telling me, Philip, I'm going to the performance at 1 o'clock, and looking forward to it, and I had lots of questions. So I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's great, and that's what I wanted people to hear, because, still hearing things online that aren't as nice as I want them to be. But I wanted to hear that exactly what you said, because I was there and it was awesome. And I thank you for all the work you've done to get that going, to getting that donor. And I think you'd be a perfect fit for this committee, so I'm going to support you on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Both committees.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. You've been obviously a tremendous part of Nashua, and particularly its downtown. I just want to say thank you for all of the things that you've done over the years, for your service to the Downtown Improvement Committee. In the past, I know that you'll continue to serve there well, and I know that you will do a good job on the other boards. So you have my full support. Thank you.
Alderman Gavea and Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for putting your name forward. We've talked a few times in the past, most recently during the chocolate stroll, where,
Yes.
Picking up a piece of chocolate turned into a 30-minute conversation about downtown Nashua, and it was a really good conversation. You're passionate about our city and what the heart of it, which is downtown, and I think you're a great fit, and I look forward to supporting your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Alderman Gavea. Alderman Lopez.
I want to thank you for putting your name forward and for all of the service that you've contributed to the downtown over the years, particularly on the Downtown Improvement Committee and the Nashua Center for the Arts. Both entities have to struggle with an element of downtown that I think is undersold by people who don't necessarily live or work down there all the time. That being, who is downtown for? Who has access to it, a right to it, and how do we maintain an active and vibrant downtown while also addressing the fact that in order for it to be active in downtown, it's pretty diverse. So around this time last year, I think Alderman Clemmons was present, we had some concerns that were brought to the Downtown Improvement Committee, particularly around people struggling with mental health issues, with substance use disorders, the pretty self-evident repercussions of the way we treat homeless people here and the supports that are available to them. And that has a lot of effect on local business owners and downtown shop owners, but it also isn't necessarily something that we can just quite so easily sweep away as other communities may have done. And the Performing Arts Center is characterized by its adjacent proximity to neighborhoods where demonstrable levels of poverty exist, and that was in fact how we justified getting some of the funding for it. So what's your opinion of these different priorities coming into play, and how do you see yourself navigating in either of the roles that you would be accepting?
I know that a big part of what the programming will be from monies that we have raised will be to help underprivileged and people with financial challenges to get to shows, to be able to experience shows, and especially school children. And that I think is a really great part of incorporating the neighborhood. I think that there's going to be a push for shows that will be affordable during the day or during the week. I've been a big supporter of the soup kitchen, and we as a business have helped them with many of their fundraising abilities, their fundraising events that they do. And I also am, I really have spent my days, I used to watch my father and my grandfather, who always engaged everybody that came down the street, no matter who they were or what they were doing. We always engaged with them. In fact, I had a long conversation with a gentleman on Saturday about, he had a cart from the grocery store and a couple of blankets on him, and I asked him how his life was going, how he was doing. I asked him where he was staying, and he said he was on the street because he had not followed the rules at the soup kitchen, but he was trying to get back in. And it was interesting because he really appreciated that I took the time to speak to him. So I feel like, we all of the businesses downtown, although it's not always easy, because sometimes the encounters aren't as nice as the one I had on Saturday. We do try to be sensitive to them as people and understand they're part of our neighborhood. They're part of what we do. We're part of our city here.
Alderman Lopez?
I appreciate that response, because as Alderman Tebow noted, I've seen some of the social media commentary too, and there are a lot of people who are eager to say that this whole National Center for the Arts is just bread and circuses while we are not attending to the other needs. And while I will be the first to say we can do more and we need to find ways to do more, I also recognize that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you only focus on one aspect of a problem, you miss all of the other opportunities. Some of the best resources for local shop owners and people downtown to offer supportive resources and alternatives to people that are struggling are the nonprofits that are adjacent to it. And that's a large part of where the infamous Tree Streets has the population that's low income. That's because the Tree Streets is the place to start over. That's where all of the places that are doing the best work, whether it's the Rescue Mission or Revive or the Soup Kitchen, they're all located in these neighborhoods, and they're all adjacent to Main Street and part of the downtown, and they do amazing work. People will point at us and how much we committed to the Performing Arts Center in terms of resources and the new market tax credits, but they're not always quick to point out that the Soup Kitchen did it first with its partnership to revitalize the Spring Street School into the Spring Street Shelter. They got the new market tax credits first. And that showed a lot of those organizations that are doing amazing work and transforming all of this tragedy into opportunity for people, new opportunities and new tricks. And I think, as you said earlier, Saturday was an amazing event, not just because of the performances, but because of the community that showed up.
Yeah.
And I think making sure that people in distress or struggling with poverty, families that are putting things back together, have access to that is key. Anyone who's worked with the homeless or in social services knows that there is a culture of poverty, and it's very important for children to get a chance to be children. Whether it's celebrating Easter with Easter baskets, or Thanksgiving with a turkey, or getting Christmas presents, it's important for families to not be defined by their economic situation. And I think the Nashua Center for the Arts is going to play a huge role in that. So I look forward to you, your voice on the Downtown Improvement Committee, and as an advocate on the for the Nashua Center for the Arts. Thank you for stepping forward with yet another project.
Thank you.
So I'll go last. I've known Philip about as long as I've been in Nashua. And I don't know, I think about almost weekly we talk. My business was downtown as well. So I have a couple of questions for you. They're easy, but I just wanted to know, I'm sure I have a laundry list, but you might have a different one. If there's one thing you could do on the Downtown Improvement Committee for the downtown this year, like what would be the top goal for you? You guys have done a ton of stuff.
This year, you know, a lot of our concentration has been on beautification. We've tried to, our philosophy is if we make the place look nice, it'll help to attract and help. It also, it inspires others, all your neighbors, to then step up and do more beautification things. I know we're going to do the street sweeping again. Of course, the holiday lighting is very important. We're talking about some sort of, you know, some sort of installation of flowers and flower beds over the, you know, to increase the look of the flower beds over the summer months. You know, I know we've helped with many of the lead up to the Performing Arts Center with paying for studies or that type of thing. I can't think of anything in particular, Shoshana, but there are so many things. Please let me know if you have something, because I would love to hear what you have to offer. Truly.
Sidewalk plow?
Yeah,
Sidewalk plow?
absolutely.
And a sidewalk plow staffer?
Yes.
That would be top of my list, but that's just one business person's opinion. Thank you for that answer. The other question I had was for the other committee, and I know that the mayor pointed out that you have impeccable taste, but if you had one act you could bring to the National Performing Arts Center, sorry, National Center for the Arts. We said Performing Arts Center for about 5 years, so what would it be?
You know, of course, I'm going to see Lyle Lovett. I mean, I would like to see Lyle Lovett. I just saw they announced he's going to be in Lowell. I'm like, I hope we can get him to Nashua. I don't know if he's just too big. I'm not sure if the 750 would be enough to afford to get him. I'm thrilled with Boss Gags. I think that is a major coup for us. Suzanne Vega is very well liked. From what I understand, the spectacle management has said that the ticket sales have far exceeded their expectations. They are thrilled. And they also are thrilled with the facility in general. They feel it's their gem. Of all their other facilities, this one is the one they've been involved with from the beginning. They've seen it, you know, they've seen all the equipment come in. They've had their say. They've saved us some money. They've been a wonderful participant, and I think they're going to do an amazing job. I'm very excited about them. But there's, Shoshana, there's so many I would love to see. They could afford, you know, there's that whole, if you can only get somebody that you can make money on if it's 750 people. But who would you like to see? Tell me.
Oh, you keep turning the question on me. I want to see Madeline Paver. She's coming to Lowell, but not coming here. She's one of my favorites, but no, that was more of your taste was brought up, so I
I
was just
see.
wondering.
I would
what your
love to see
favorite-
Lyle Lovett. I think he's a great act. And there's so many I would
There was
love
no
to
wrong
see.
answer.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think we're going to be very surprised at what it's going to bring and just the quality of life that it's going to bring to the area. So, thank you.
Any other questions for Philip? Okay. Oh, Alderman Lopez.
Trying to help Alderman Tebow over here. I think there's some grassroots support for Blues Brothers: The Next Generation.
Yes.
Ooh, I'd be
Okay.
in for that.
Love it.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you. I have a constituent actually that's in that band, and so he's asked a couple of times. And I
Oh,
put him in touch, I think, with Pete, but I don't think he's been able to get back with him. And obviously, Peter's been probably, out straight right now with the opening. But I did forward his information, so he's going to try to reach out again to Peter and see if he can. I think he's the drummer in the band, I think. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
I know the band. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and read both, and we'll have Lindsay come up.
All right. The next one, Performing Arts Center Board of Trustees. Lindsay Rinaldi, new appointment, term to expire February 14th, 2027. 2 Lock Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064. Philip Sconsis, new appointment, term to expire February 14th, 2026. 14 Ashland Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm nominating Lindsay Rinaldi to the Board of Trustees to the Nashua Center for the Arts. Now, Lindsay is the director of the Community Music School, is classically trained in opera, and has been involved in many music groups, not only Nashua, the Nashua School, but also others before that. She was on the steering committee for the Nashua Performing Arts Center, and and she knows the performance business quite well. And one thing that struck me was, you will recall that the feasibility study that was done by Duncan Webb suggested that we could put the Performing Arts Center on the second floor above retail. And that was sort of the plan going into the RFP for the various architects and the designers of the Performing Arts Center. Lindsay was the first person who articulated doubts about the second floor concept, on the idea that, look, if you want performers that you want to see to come there, they're not going to want to go up elevators and stairs to get to the Performing Arts Center. They want to come in and get out quickly. And if you want, and that will be a big handicap for scheduling performers at the center if you use the second floor. And people listened, but did not make a change in the design then. But as we interviewed the architects, and Icon was eventually chosen, they made the same point, especially Icon said, this is not going to work on the second floor. But Lindsay had forecasted that, months earlier. And eventually the steering committee saw the logic in that, and when you see the way the Performing Arts Center is designed, the idea that the truck can just pull up, run, the equipment down a short concrete slab right onto the side of the stage, that's the whole point. And that's the point that Lindsay made from the beginning, that we want to make things as easy as possible for the performers that will come to Nashua, and we want it to be a place that performers in general prefer, so that we get our selection, at least within the parameters of the 750 seats. We are a venue that is a preferred venue to those performers we're seeking to attract. So I just tell that story because I think it shows that Lindsay has great insight into the business of performances, and will be a good addition to the Board of Trustees for the Nashua Center for the Arts. And of course, she's incredibly passionate about music, and we all know that because we've encountered her over time. But anyway, so I'm glad to be nominating Lindsay Rinaldi, and she did grow up in Nashua too, right?
Yeah.
So I will turn it over to Lindsay, just so she can tell you a little more about herself and why she's interested in the Nashua Center for the Arts.
Thank you, Mayor Donchis. It's very nice of you, all the lovely things you just said. I appreciate it. I think they're all true. So I am honored to have been asked to serve on this committee. After sitting on the steering committee for so long and being involved in the design process, it was the first time I had been involved in that. It opens my eyes a little bit more to what you folks all do all the time as well, and how incredibly amazing that is, and all the work that goes into those kinds of construction projects. So as somebody who grew up in Nashua and enjoyed a lot of the products that you folks built, that's really exciting. So thank you. And to have the opportunity to do that with the Nashua Center for the Arts is, I feel equally touched to have been asked. The thing that makes me most excited about serving on this board as the chair of the Nashua Arts Commission as well, I think by being the chair of the Arts Commission as well as having a seat on this board, it will give me the really good place to be an advocate for nonprofit use of the building, whether it be for fundraisers or events or things like that, being basically like a liaison for those nonprofit groups, whether they be arts related or not. I think that there's a lot of systems that need to be put in place to make sure that that access is made equitable, and I'm excited to hopefully be a part of those discussions and be a point person for those organizations to come and talk to so that they feel heard. And I know that Pete Lally from Spectacle is very willing to have those conversations and make a system work that make sure that everybody who wants to use the facility, that there's a channel for that to occur. So I would say that is one of the things that I'm most excited about. Secondly, to be an advocate to make sure that low-cost tickets are available, whether those be rush programs. I already know that there's a program in which you can check out 2 tickets at the Nashville Library, which I think is amazing, but making sure that folks from all socioeconomic backgrounds have the ability to enjoy the facility as an audience member, and I think is really important. And I think that that's something that I'm very excited about being on this committee. And lastly, again, other systems that need to be built, but I'm really excited about the idea of getting more young talent from Nashua connected with the Art Center for employment purposes. I think that this is a really great opportunity, a walkable opportunity for folks who are downtown to be able to learn a trade, such as, working within the entertainment industry in this avenue. Something that's probably not on my resume because I was like 20 when I did it, but I worked for Broadway Across America. I worked for Live Nation. I worked for Blue Man Group for 6 years, crawling under the stage and filling tubes with banana and picking up toilet paper. I don't know if anybody's seen that show, but there's a lot of really silly things you do as a stage crew, but you just do it to make it happen. And I think that back of house experience made me really grow as a person. So it gives me a good idea of what's necessary backstage. And then my performing experience gives me a good avenue into what needs to happen on stage for performance. So by being in both of those places as a young person, that was really invigorating for me and kind of helped steer my path of life a little bit. And it might be a little wide-eyed, but I have a feeling that's just how I am. I'd like other young people to be able to have that too. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find a path for folks who might want to work at the Art Center one day to be able to take advantage of that.
Great. Alderman Tebow, then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I was one of the lucky few to be able to follow the mayor in the other day and end up on that slab that he was talking about and go right onto the stage, even though we probably should have went through the front. But thank you for that idea, because it is literally, you walk up there and you're right on the stage. The thing I like about you is that you have so much energy and so much passion for this and for the arts. And, there's lots of kids out there that maybe it's the right fit for them to go into the arts. And for some reason, you know, I said it before when you were speaking before here, I felt like coming out of COVID, there was kind of a war on the arts and people looking to get rid of those programs more than, you know, make them bloom. So I appreciate all you guys that are trying to do that, and I'm fully going to support your, you know, your role on here. So,
Thank you. Alderman Lopez?
So first, you're already accomplishing your goal. I caught the lead singer of No More Blue Tomorrows working it within the mix. So there's already young musicians in there, and like they've been playing at the Tree Streets Block Party for years. They could easily put on a big show. But I was very impressed by the opening ceremony's dynamic. Instead of going for a big name, which I would have expected, I was like, why wouldn't we use Recycle Percussion or someone, you know, super famous to bring attention? And the tone of it reflected exactly what you've been describing, a variety show that included a number of very, very impressive performers, like in terms of notoriety, but also a lot of very talented local people. I mean, the Peacock Players are not going to forget being able to be among the first performing acts, and that's great for kids to have that experience, to be on stage and to be part of something, you know, so amazing as the opening of a performing arts center. So I think you're definitely already on the right track. I had some reservations when I saw your nomination in terms of the close association with the National Arts Commission, because I think I had it backwards. I was thinking like, oh, is the National Arts Commission going to start like offering funding and stuff? But the way you described your priorities in terms of being able to advocate for those arts organizations is spot on. I think your priorities are great. I think your ideas and your vision, you know, have really already contributed a lot to our art scene. And I look forward to more of that. So I appreciate you stepping forward. Your resume is like there's like no fluff. It's literally just a list of all the things you're doing. So I know you're very active, you're very engaged, and I appreciate you taking our community arts so seriously.
Thank you.
And if I'd known about the 6 years as they working for the Blue Man Group, I would have definitely mentioned that in the
I've given them, some of them, voice lessons, actually, for their other shows, not needed.
Alderman Clegg?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, I did not speak about Mr. Sconsis prior because I knew Ms. Rinaldi would be coming up, but I do think you would be perfect for the job. I've spoken to you. I see your passion, and I even spoke to you at the theater, and you'll be great in that job. But I do want to address some of the things that Ms. Rinaldi had mentioned. First off, I can tell you that her school that she runs, the community music school, her passion is there. And Mr. Lochi who was performing there, is one of your teachers. Mm-hmm. And Ethan, I believe, also works for you, but was also a student. And you can see what's come out of there. So she's got this passion and so on. And I think you're a common sense advocate. And I'm blessed to be able to be the liaison to the Arts Commission and to be there and watch you firsthand. And when the money comes in, how she's very fair and equitable. She has to recuse herself because her school is one of the recipients of it, but she's always pushing all of the other organizations and all of the arts programs and trying to work with them to make application and so on. So I can see how having you is going to be a great advocate for them. And I also want to talk to something that you mentioned about employment. I had a friend who she was an actor-singer, and she did other things. And when we started talking about our art center, she reached out to Mr. Lally, and he got her a job in Laconia. Nothing special, really kind of as low level as possible. She's now the choreographer of, and I can't think of the school, but it's in Derry. It's a private school, and they just did a performance, and she got all kinds of rave reviews. So she watched performances and so on at Laconia and other things, and she just, so I agree. I think if we can get more employment there, that's exactly what will happen. So thank you for mentioning that, because I do think it's important, and you're going to be a great asset. And just to speak to something that the mayor said, Lindsay was the common sense voice of reality, and Madam Chairwoman will know this too, having been on the Performing Arts Steering Committee. When we would say something, she'd say, no, it's just not going to work with the talent. not always listened right away, but we definitely heard her, and she's persistent, quietly persistent in her thinking. So she works well with people, and that too will bode well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for putting your name forward. Thank you for everything that you do. You have my full support.
Thank you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I'm not a member of this committee, but Lindsay's been involved from day one, tirelessly working towards the grand opening, and I fully support her nomination. And I also always wondered who picked up after the Blue Man Group.
It's a big job.
I assumed it was like a yellow man group or a lower tier.
Thank you for putting your name forward and bringing forward such an incredibly experienced person for this role, Mayor Donchas. I also had the same story around switching the lobby in my head, because it's so indicative of somebody who is a performer or does this stuff every day, and their experience and how that can affect a design or a choice where, you know, architects like, oh, it will look cool this way or whatever it was. But having that common sense background that you don't always get unless you have a really good group of people from all different walks of life. It sounds like a small detail, but small details can make a big difference. So I remember that story too, and how I was like, oh, that was huge. You know, people choose whether they're going to perform based on if it's easy to get in, what's the sound system like. The chairs, remember how much time we spent on the chairs? The chairs were very comfortable. I was very happy with the chairs. So I appreciated your experience and thought process there, and I'm sure you'll bring the same to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you.
All set. Okay, we'll take up your nomination later in the evening. We have Ethics Review Committee.
We have Roger Weissman, new appointment, term to expire March 14th, 2026, 88 Peel Road, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03062. And David Tenza, new appointment, term to expire March 28th, 2026, 10 Monica Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060. You guys can come up. Alderman Tenza, you can take your old seat.
Oh, that's right. Mr. Mayor?
All right, Madam Chair, well, I'm nominating Dave Tenza, we'll go one at a time, I think, for the Ethics Committee. Now, everybody, I think, is familiar with attorney and former Alderman Tenza. He was 10 years as a prosecutor in Hillsborough County after graduating from Suffolk Law School and St. A's College. Then professionally, he left and became a practicing attorney in private practice on his own, and is now employed by McLean Middleton in Manchester as an attorney there. McLean being one of, or I think maybe one of the two biggest law firms in New Hampshire, maybe Devine or McLean, I'm not sure which. He served 4 years on the Board of Aldermen, where I think he showed himself to have a very cool head and reasoned approach towards all the issues that we faced. Also active in the bar, been president of the National Bar Association, a bitty basketball coach, and I think his participation on the Ethics Committee will, again demonstrate his fair-mindedness, and if there are any cases, he will be able to consider them in light of, the facts and the ethics standards that are set forth in the Nashua Revised Ordinances. So I'm glad to appoint Dave Tenza, and hope you will consider him favorably. And of course, I'll let Dave tell you a little bit about himself and of his interest in the Ethics Committee.
Mr. Tenza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Chair, as the mayor said, I'm Dave Tenza. I've been a resident of the city of Nashua since 2007. As the mayor said, I've served the city in the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office, prosecuting from 2007 to 2017, prosecuting felony level crimes, and, working closely with police department, but also a lot of agencies and different people here in the city. Since then, since I've been in private practice, still continued on in litigation and am an attorney now in Plain Middleton in Manchester. I welcome the opportunity to serve on the Ethics Committee. I think it's an important job. And I think that, I bring a perspective both as someone who is a former public employee, as well as someone who's a former elected official. I think I have a respect for both the folks who work in our city to make it run well, but also respect and healthy respect for taxpayers and understand that, how people are representing the city matters. Enforcing the code of ethics matters, so that everyone can feel confident that the services that you folks are delivering are valid. So happy to take any questions you folks have.
Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question I've been asking every candidate we've had for the Ethics Review Committee, and you kind of highlighted it during your opening, but being part of the Ethics Review Committee, that's a very nonpartisan position. Highlighted in your resume, you've had political experience, obviously, in the past. Is that something you're able to put aside, look at the facts, and come to a conclusion without any political biases coming in?
I mean, I think absolutely, and I understand on the Ethics Committee, I would be not the only person, but one of 5 people making the decision. So I expect that everyone on the committee will have varied backgrounds in that. But, being an attorney and being in court, I think part of what our job is to be, fair and impartial at times, right? We have an obligation not just to represent our clients' interests, but to do so in a way that's fair and consistent with the law. So I would not, regardless of who came before the committee, if it was somebody that I didn't feel comfortable, someone who I had a personal relationship with, I would certainly recuse myself. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. So former Alderman Tenza and I, we served together here. I think with a lot of us did, and you've always had an even-minded approach, and I think you'll serve the Ethics Committee well. I see no reason why you wouldn't take that same approach there. I think your answer that, if somebody was to come up and that you knew personally, you'd recuse yourself, I think is obviously the right answer. I wouldn't expect anything less from anyone on the committee. And so I think you'll, with your background and having, being an attorney both on both sides, and also your political background here, knowing the city and how the city government works, I think you're the perfect fit, and you have my full support.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you again. I served with you, obviously, on the Board of Aldermen. When I look at the resume you put forward, you put your community aspect of things that you've worked on, and you put your legal community involvement. And the first one that pops up is the first on the list as the president of the Nashua Bar Association. That position is, I would assume, is for somebody that's unbiased and knows the law and knows all of that. And to what my colleague also stated, the fact that you've shown unbiased and that you've worked in the, as you pointed out, the public sector. You've worked here on the Board of Aldermen and you've worked in the private sector. You see all sides of it. And I think sometimes that's, we lose perspective when we've only gone one direction. So I think the fact that you've got that wide variety of experience does make you perfect for the position. So while I don't get a vote today, I do when it comes to the Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I've known Dave, served with Dave, and as an attorney and a graduate of a great college, fellow alumnus, I fully support his nomination.
Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, I just wanted to express support as well and congratulate the mayor on another pick. I know the ethics committee particularly doesn't meet all the time. So being able to identify candidates that understand the general principles of government and how the city's processes work and are able to be both discerning and respectful of those, I think former Alderman Tenz is a great pick. I think Alderman GOV made a very good point that we need to be conscious of bipartisan, I prefer nonpartisan at the local level, although I don't know if I'm being realistic about that anymore. But I think Dave's track record has spoken for itself. Even the 4 years that he was on there, this board was divided on quite a few very tense issues, and he was able to stay focused on representing the people, doing his work, and didn't get dragged into any of the back and forth that I, for example, am constantly being pulled into. So I think he's a great pick, and I commend you on finding good candidates to get this work done.
So I think that you brought forward a very qualified person for the job, Mayor Donches, and I know Dave served with all of us, so I was grateful that there'll be a perspective from having sat on this side of the horseshoe. I will say I was a little bit concerned about how well you know many of us in this chamber and how we might be the person who comes in front of us. So you touched on that a little bit. You said you'd recuse yourself if you had a personal relationship. Do you consider us personal relationships? What would be your definition of when you think you should recuse yourself?
That's a very good question. And that's probably something that I would refer to the city, to Attorney Bolton for an opinion on. It's funny, I'm amazingly at a point in my legal career where some of my peers are becoming judges. And so and they sit on cases that I'm in front of them on, even though we had a professional relationship before, and somewhat of a personal relationship. And so that is not it doesn't disqualify me from appearing before them. But it'd have to probably be a case-by-case basis, and I would seek outside counsel from the city as to whether it's a conflict or not.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Would you like to speak on Mr. Wiseman now?
Yes, thank you. I'm also nominating Roger Wiseman, who's to my left here, for the Ethics Committee. He's a resident of Ward 8, and you can see from his resume that he has extensive high-level management experience, CFO, many other positions in the healthcare industry, including Tenet Healthcare, a large healthcare provider. So he has a lot of experience in managing people and evaluating situations where I'm sure there were conflicts regarding ethics. And Mr. Wiseman has indicated that he would really like to do something for Nashua, where he resides, of course. And so it seemed that he was a good fit. It seemed to me that he was a good fit for the Ethics Committee, someone who has a lot of experience in evaluating, I'd say, complex personnel kind of decisions or situations. And so I'm happy to be nominating Roger, and I will now ask Roger to tell you a little more about himself and why he's interested in the Ethics Committee.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the recommendation. Excuse me if I'm losing my voice a little bit, but it's having grandchildren that bring this stuff home from school and grandparents who visit them. But in any event, my wife and I have lived in Nashua for approximately, almost 9 years now. Prior to that, we spent over 10 years in Hollis. And so when we decided to buy our retirement home, we looked around and we decided that Nashua was a great city to live in, not only from its safety standpoints and its services, but just the overall community in which we were lucky enough to buy a home and reside in. In my career, I have spent almost my entire career in healthcare. I'm retired, and in my career, I spent over, I guess, 40 years in the C-suite, and mainly as a CFO, but also as a COO and a CEO. And I had the good fortune of working in Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Detroit, and then I ended my career out in California. And the benefit, I think, that of working all those years in healthcare is you get to, across various states, is you get to see all kinds of different activities, operations, conflicts, physicians, hospitals, employees, labor unions. And so I had the challenge and the benefit of dealing with those and trying to work out what was best for all the parties involved. After retiring, having spent many hours and unable to really give back to my industry and to my city, would like to do that. And so that's why I'm here today. And I'd like to bring some of those experiences, especially having dealt with issues where it highly charged and people jump to conclusions and calming situations down where you put facts on the table and then based on those facts make recommendations for boards such as yourself to take whatever action you determine is appropriate. So I would look forward to serving, and I am giving back to my industry, and I'd like to give back to the city of Nashua by helping in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Tebow, then Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So Mr. Weissman's in my ward. I get to meet him at the mayor's Ward 8 Town Hall. And he exactly said what he said here. He wanted to do more. What can he do for the city? And so, and here you are. So I appreciate that. And, we need more people like that. And it's good to see some different faces, although I love seeing Alderman Tenza as well. He's also in my ward. So I'm a proud alderman today. But I really like the difference. We have a varied group in there of the 5 so far. And I think you're going to bring something different to the table, and I think that's excellent, and I fully support you as well.
Thank you.
Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, just to start off, I think it's great that you bring a non-attorney kind of look at things. Obviously, it's an ethics committee. We need attorneys on it to interpret that, but I think having an outside opinion, somebody who might think a little differently, is not a bad thing, in my opinion. And to just stay fair with what I've asked everybody else who's applied and been interviewed for this committee, it's obviously a political, in retrospect, a political committee. Are you able to put aside any political bias you might have and look at facts and come to the conclusion of those facts?
Yes, I believe I can. I tend to not be either too far right or too far left. I am happy to be a centrist, but I think it's important, and it was mentioned earlier, that in dealing with principles and ethics, which is the basis by which we all have to operate, we have to put biases aside if we have them, and it comes down to the facts. What are the facts? And then the interpretation of the facts is going to be different obviously from person to person. But bringing that facts and information forward to the board, as committees are responsible for doing, rather than making decisions. I think I will put those biases behind whatever they may be. Because at the end of the day, like in the hospital business, what's important is the patient. What's important here is the city, its residents. And so keeping those in view and making any kind of recommendations, I think is important.
Perfect. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez, then Alderman Clemmons.
I appreciate your comments and your commitment to service. When we talk about partisanship and politics and all that kind of stuff, most of us showed up here because we're trying to serve the city. We're trying to do something for our community and give back. And I think while politics can definitely maybe inform that, once you get wrapped up in the dynamics of what certain causes, how to look at some things and how to look at others, having a diverse perspective is important. As was pointed out, there's a lot of lawyers and a lot of legal expertise on the ethics committee as it is forming. And we do need an outside perspective. And I was very impressed by your professional accomplishments. I think you're going to bring that diversity of experience, but you also have the credibility to back it up. I mean, people can't, poor Lindsay's had great insights and people didn't catch on right away. I think you're going to be able to express yourself effectively and balance the viewpoints. You can hear in your voice your commitment to service. And I think that's the cornerstone of any ethics committee. So I appreciate you stepping forward. I appreciate your willingness to come to Nashua, be part of our community, and contribute in such a meaningful manner.
Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say, I read your resume. I was impressed, and I'm equally impressed with your conversation and the answers to the questions tonight, and I will be supporting you fully. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I too, very impressed with your resume and so on. I worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs for a lot of years, and knowing doctors and medical staff, there are a lot of different boards that they have to answer to, and most of them are made up of doctors or their peers. When it came to the ethics review committee, it wasn't just of their peers, it was people of all different walks. So we didn't just have doctors or medical staff on it. And it did bring a different perspective. And while we'll have enough attorneys on there to answer any kind of legal questions and so on, you will give a different perspective. You've obviously held positions of prestige, and you've had a lot of people worked underneath you, and I'm sure you've had to make some ethical decisions and counsel people and so on. So I think you'll bring that to it. And again, as I don't get a vote here tonight, I do think that the board will do a good job if they approve you, and thank you for stepping up. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. We'll take up your nomination later in the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Economic Development Director, Liz Hannum, new appointment, indefinite term at the pleasure of the mayor. 12506 Northeast Hassan Street, Unit B, Portland, Oregon, 97230.
It's funny, the way it looks on is that she's mayor of Portland. I was like, okay. Welcome.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Madam Chair. So as you see, I'm nominating Liz Hannum to the position of Economic Development Director. This is a position that Tim Cummings has held for a number of years now, but has moved on to the Administrative Services Director. And so in order to search for his replacement, we advertised extensively, and we formed an interview team consisting of Tim Cummings, Matt Sullivan, the Community Development Director, Celia Leonard from the Legal Department, Lisa Foto, and Megan Karen. And interviewed different candidates, reviewed a number of resumes, and it came down to two people, and I and the whole group then interviewed them again. And we all thought that Liz was the best candidate for Nashua. In terms of her history, Liz grew up in the Worcester area, and that's the principal reason she's seeking to come back to New England. She went to Bucknell as an undergraduate private school in Pennsylvania, and then went to Clark University in Worcester to get a master's degree. She has worked in economic development in South Dakota, Gallup, New Mexico, if you've ever been to Gallup, which I have. It's a really unique place. And now in Oregon. Of course, the mission of the Economic Development Department of Economic Development function in general is to build a stronger, healthier Nashua economy in any respect that we can, attracting jobs, strengthening downtown, helping to develop areas that are called for in the master plan, for example, Amherst Street, the Daniel Webster Highway, if we can, if the day comes, the Daniel Webster College property. And so Liz has visited the city, and Tim has shown her the various areas that need attention. The South End, downtown, Amherst Street, the areas that I've just discussed. Now, she's got experience developing, and of course we all know that housing and affordable housing is a big challenge for Nashua and for New England in general. Liz, has the experience bringing housing to her current job, assisting in the development of a significant housing project, and now has firsthand experience. This is not just something that she's read in a master plan or something. Trying to find housing in Nashua, not so easy, especially if you have a small dog. So she's been looking in the South End and elsewhere, and so far, if she wanted to wait 90 days or 120 days, she could probably get in. So definitely personally committed to the cause of our mission of trying to bring more housing and affordable housing to Nashua. And I think her variety of experience in terms of all these places she's worked across the country helps in providing a perspective on just economic development and economic problems in general. These are all very different areas with very different economies. South Dakota, New Mexico, and Oregon are extremely different in terms of the economic challenges each of them faces. And that certainly is a strength that Liz brings to Nashua. So I am confident that Liz, still working with Tim to some degree in terms of showing her the ropes, can do a really good job for the city and help us move the city's economy forward. And therefore, I'm glad to be nominating Liz Hannum, and I will ask Liz to tell you a little more about herself and of her interest in Nashua and why she's seeking this position.
Hi, Liz Hannum. I currently live in Portland, Oregon. Grew up in the area, as you heard, and would like to move back. And I'm really missing, especially during the pandemic, missing my family, and would love to be back in the New England area. And when I visited, I just fell in love with your building stock in the downtown area and the surrounding areas, and it just felt really comfortable and homey. Loved the community. I got a chance to read through the Imagine Nashua master plan, and think that my experience in the downtown can actually be really helpful for those areas outside of the downtown as well. It looks like your goal is to kind of bring the village aspect to parts of the community and build community within those. And I've had a lot of experience doing that in the downtowns that I've worked in. So I think that skill set will be good throughout the community and not just the downtown. And I'm really excited. I got to go to a couple of different places in the community. I'm really excited about the Amherst Street corridor area. There's so much potential down there. There's really good housing options that could be in that area, as well as some more pedestrian safety kind of things. So there's lots of different ideas that I've heard and seen in the master plan that I think I could bring some really good skill set to. I've had the opportunity to work on all kinds of projects, from affordable housing projects, market rate, adaptive reuse projects. There's lots of really cool buildings around here that need some adaptive reuse, so I'm pretty excited to be a part of that. I'm really excited to continue working on the housing. As you mentioned, I'm struggling to find housing, so I knew exactly what I would be working on the first thing I did. So I'm pretty excited about the whole community, and there's just an amazing history in this area. So I guess I'll take questions.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So Director Cummings told you about the warts of the job as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. So, like you said, Nashua's a great place. My concern with hiring someone, and I guess, they said, you come from the area in New England. I was concerned when I first saw the resume that it was Portland, Oregon, so I'm like, how would someone ever know how Nashua is? I've been here all my life, born and bred in Nashua, with the Nashua area, and, even I don't always know everything that's in Nashua despite being here that long. And, I know Director Cummings wasn't from around here, and if I was alderman then, I probably wouldn't have voted for him, but I'm kidding. So how do you get to know the area? And I think you've already started that, so you've already answered part of that, but
Yeah.
how do you really get to know the area? We have, different corridors. You talked about Amherst Street. We also have the South End, and obviously downtown. How do you get to know that? What would be one of the first things that you do as you take over this role?
Yeah, I think it's about building partnerships and relationships with the people, just asking questions and listening really well. I think I've had to work in many different areas that have very different needs, and it's been really kind of a labor of love to figure out what those needs are in those communities based on what the community tells me. And so I think it's about just talking with people quite a bit. I know housing is a need nationally, so that's not something that we have to worry about, but all the nuances with development and how we shape the community is going to be based on the community that lives there. So listening is the number one thing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Clemmons, then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. So I was on the board when Tim was up for nomination in your seat, and Tim was from Massachusetts, and professionally, obviously, his career was in Massachusetts, and New Hampshire is just so different. And yet, we're only 4 miles from the border, but it is night and day. And I imagine that it is night and day probably from Portland, Oregon as well. So I asked him back then, are you ready for the challenge that is in front of you, which is basically coming into a town or a city that has an old mill mentality. Half the city, if you were to ask them what changes they want, they would tell you, I want to go back to 1950. So that's the challenge that you're up against. And so, my question to you is, why, I don't know if you knew that, but knowing that that's the case, I mean, what is your goal? What do you want to see out of your position, I guess?
Okay, that's a great question, actually. I think the town that I'm working in currently is an old mill town as well, just outside of Portland. And so I think there's a lot of similarities in that. There's some culture clashes with people from Portland moving into the community. So there's a lot of conservative values as well as a more liberal, kind of progressive side of town. And so I think I've had to navigate that, even with two business owners kind of right next door to each other, having to kind of mediate those conversations. So I've been in the middle of it. So I think I'm at least comfortable being uncomfortable. And moving forward in positions, just to figure out what's going on, and how to move things forward in a way that works for everybody, or partially for everyone. So I think that's been a real challenge for me, and I think I've stepped up to the plate in the community that I'm in currently. And the second part of that is kind of what my personality is bringing it, and I really do try to kind of be a part of the community as well, and so trying to bring best practices to a community, educate people about what those best practices are, and then listen to the feedback and how it might work for the community, if it works for the community. So so just kind of, again, doing my research, making sure that I understand what those best practices are, and how we can, as I put it in my current community, is R&D is rip off and duplicate, and modify it for the community that I work in, and make it work for that.
Oh, sorry. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. That was actually really great. That's it's good to know that you work in a similar environment out there, because I think we face multiple challenges here because we don't have the ability to do things a lot of times because we have to get permission from the legislature, or things have to go through very archaic. There's just a lot of arcane things that happen, and you'll get to see that. But navigating those things and having the attitude that, I guess, of not losing sight of the end goal because you have to get through all of those challenges, I think is key to anyone that's going to be in this position, because it would be very easy for somebody to step into this position and be like, I don't want to deal with all of this, because it's tough. And Tim has done a fantastic job of managing that, and I know that he will mentor you through that as well. And so I wish you the best of luck. I think that you're going to do a fantastic job in following in his footsteps. And, he's certainly given you a great roadmap. And I think if we continue to follow that, this city is going to be very successful. So thank you.
Alderman Gavea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's great, and you have a good resume that is impressive, and you have the background experience. I do agree with Alderman Clemmons. If you go around my ward and ask people what they want to see, it's nothing. Let's not do anything and just leave me alone. But I think we need to be able to move forward, and that's something we see whenever there's a new project, at least since I've been on the board, is when you bring up a new project with a lot of these people, a lot of them just doesn't faze them. They either have no interest, they don't want it, or they just want Nashua to be the way it was, like when my parents grew up here, when my grandparents moved over here and came here. So I do see some of those challenges as well, and thanks for bringing up Amherst Street. I know once you get past the highway, it kind of turns into where me and Alderman Dowd share part of Amherst Street. So I do believe there's a lot that can be done in that area that would, I think, really make the city glow even more. Just the one question I have is, in the next 5 years, where do you see the city as a whole from an economic development standpoint?
That's a good question. I think reading the Imagine Nashua vision, it seems like there's a lot of really good options. I think the growth is kind of exponential at this point. And so being able to shape that change, I think, is going to be really important for the Economic Development Department. And being able to kind of create those small, like, village neighborhoods and create livable communities for the citizens, I think is going to be really important. So I think that's probably what I would say, is that, you know, making sure that there are enough services for everybody, and in a accessible way, for each community is the future I can see, out of that master plan.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
All said, Alderman GOV?
Yes.
Alderman Lopez?
So I have a slightly different take on this. I think you're heading for a great job. I think Nashva's community is very vibrant, and I think we've fended off a lot of challenges over the years with a sort of quiet dignity, particularly like the pandemic and economic recessions and all those. Nashua has thrived under pretty unusual circumstances. And while I will give credit where credit's due with regards to Director Cummings, I think our greatest successes have also reflected a community that's willing to step forward and be very supportive. So I think that engaging component is very important, that building partnerships and that, you know, not just listening, but hearing. Where we kind of referenced the housing stock or the inability of it, it's definitely true that it is of economic importance that if a young professional or somebody can't move here for a job, we could be potentially losing talent. But that's not the same housing crisis that's being faced by other members of the community. And I would point out that Nashua has benefited from giants over the years, whether it was the late President McCarthy or Marie Goyette or any other number of leaders that have spent their lives dedicated to this community. Their ideas and their experiences have really helped us navigate, and there's that danger too with the housing crisis, that when people get priced out of where they're living or they start to get, you know, unable to maintain the houses that they have, we don't want to lose them because there's cheaper housing somewhere else. And we don't want to lose the momentum and the contributions that they can still offer to the city. I think economically we have probably over-focused on the young professional for a lot of years, and we've neglected elder housing, we've neglected low-income housing and workforce housing, and those are areas that we as a community need to be looking at. I think it helps, particularly, that you're interested in moving to Nashua, because I think having a resident perspective in a lot of areas, overnight parking comes to mind, is very important because it looks different on paper than it does when you're actually here overnight and you're trying to figure out how far away you have to park to get to your car. So there's a lot of issues that I think do need attention, but I think there's a tremendous amount of support in Nashua. One of the first times that Director Cummings and I butted heads was with regards to the fundamental role that charities and nonprofits play in Nashua. They help, it's not underwriting another business's expenses to try to help an organization that is doing work that the city needs done. And there's a lot of people who are very passionate and committed to the work that they're doing that can help you in your role and can help the city's economic development and do. So I think having that perspective is key. In reviewing your resume, I've seen plenty of professional accomplishments of late in the economic development, but I also noticed the refugee assistance program and the other types of work that you've done too. And I think that is going to be very, very helpful in this community as well. My only question is, because I haven't really razzed Director Cummings recently, is in his recent interview for his current position, he pointed out that he was experienced and professional as an economic development, but his passion was city administration. Where's your passion? Is this the job you want? Is this what you're committing to?
Yes, definitely. I as you noticed, have kind of created a social justice bend to most of my economic development work. I spent about 8 or 9 years in developing countries working with communities to help them with an economic development lens build equity and sustainability in their communities. And I think that economic development can be used as a really great tool for that, in both creating wealth and creating equity as well. So that is my passion, definitely.
That's an excellent answer for me. Someday I'll have to tell you about the stuff I'm doing in Honduras.
Yeah.
Thank you for stepping forward.
Alderman Tebow, I have questions, but I'll let you go.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So this question's more about, I guess, I don't know, I'll just say it. So we've had some big projects here in Nashville. You know, Director Cummings has worked on, obviously, the Nashville Center for the Arts, which we had to use new market tax credits for. We have the TIF for the riverfront. So there's been a lot of creative ways of maneuvering money to be able to have some of these big projects that we've had. And so my question is, have you had could you tell us about a project that you had where maybe it was a big one and you had to kind of maneuver the money around and do something creative to get it done?
Yeah, I think almost all of the big projects that I've worked on have had, 3 to 12 different funding sources. And so, between new market tax credits, we use urban renewal, which is kind of like a TIF, but I've used TIF money for projects. We've used housing credits, Section 8 housing for things. So there's lots of really amazing, especially federal dollars out there for projects that I've gotten to use. One example, I worked on a 53-unit affordable housing adaptive reuse project. So we took an old church and made it into a housing first model for individuals that had trouble staying in housing. And so we used, I think, 13 different funding sources, if I want to try and get that project off the ground. And that was a pretty successful project. So we managed, we pulled it together, piece by piece, but we got all the funding that we needed for that project. And even, as adaptive reuse projects go, there's lots of last minute, oops, we didn't know we had to rewire the whole building. So finding funding for those kind of whoops projects with adaptive reuse has been also something that I've had to do along the way. So there's definitely, getting creative is kind of my passion as well. Running the organization that I run, I think I have 11 different funding sources through just for my organization. I have 11 staff members, so it's constantly creative, trying to find money to make sure that I can afford all my staff all the time, plus amazing projects that we can do in the community. So.
Follow.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So just to follow up that, so that was the money. How about a project where there was a lot of critics to it, or maybe at least like half and half, and that you had to kind of, either win them over or at least just try to push forward, knowing that the project that you were creating was better for the town or the city that you're in, compared to, there's always going to be critics, even if there's one, right? But
Yeah.
What about a project that you had a lot and you had to really kind of really wade through that to get to the end completion of a project?
Yeah, I can use that same example from the housing project. The housing first model is essentially, there's no reason to kick out a person from that housing unless there's violence. And so that concept in itself, that they would house people who were still on drugs and things in the community was a real hard sell. And that we were using public dollars to support these people. And so what I ended up doing, even the commissioners that were there were, some of them were really skeptical about the concept of a housing first model. So I actually brought the community that started the concept out to speak to the commissioners. They did 3 days fully with the commissioners to see a model that had been successful for 7 years so far. And so trying to get them to see not just a conceptual idea of what it looks like, but actually hear from people that have done it and have done it successfully for 7 years. I think that was the way that I could help them understand the concept and move that forward. We had community meetings so that people that were concerned could talk about what their concerns were and have those experts in the concept talk to them through the concept and the concerns. They had missteps as well, and so learning from their mistakes just as much as their successes was really important.
Thank you. Yep.
I have a number of questions.
Yeah.
Your resume is very impressive, and I thought there was a great range of experience that you've had. I am the affordable housing, I don't ever shut up about it, Alderman.
Okay.
But the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, you would actually sit on that. And so I'm really interested in your perspective. You've read our Imagine Nashua. I love the first opening you said was you fell in love with our housing stock, or our building stock. I thought that was very funny. But some of the words that have come up as we've been talking is, exponential growth. There's a real need for housing, not just, low income but also market rate. Like, people just can't find housing in Nashua. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know your philosophy on how you handled that sort of growth. But still make sure that what we're bringing in is reflective of the community.
Yeah, I think the federal incentives that are out there for 80% AMI, 100% AMI average median income kind of projects, where we're talking policemen or teachers or those, that still counts as affordable housing a lot of the times. And so reflecting the income levels is really important, but the incentive programs that the federal government provides for those really lends themselves really well to mixed income housing. And so I think having developers take advantage of some of those incentives can create opportunities for all levels of the community, all income levels. So I think that has been really, really supportive of a wide range of housing options. So I guess my philosophy is use the incentives that are out there to create opportunities for everyone.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that you also talked about mixed income. That's really important. You also talked about equity and sustainability in terms of economic development.
Yeah.
Talked about working in third world countries. Nashua is a welcoming city. We have a very diverse background. So I'm interested in your thoughts around bringing those sorts of ideas to Nashua.
Yeah, I think, some of the really basic things that I've been able to do in other communities is just provide a babysitter for public meetings or a translator. And I think those really simple concepts can help people that wouldn't necessarily be able to be able to participate, could participate with just a simple, $20 an hour babysitter. And so I think there's really good opportunities to get more communities involved with more language options, as well as childcare options. I think there's a real opportunity for the people that create, or people that use the community need to be part of the decision-making process, because they're going to make it better. The way that I use the community is different than the way that you use the community. And so if we're going to create a community that continues to be welcoming, we need both of those opinions in the room.
I just have one more. Well, I have 10 more, but I'm not gonna keep everyone here tonight. I'm interested in your perspective around environmental justice.
Yeah, so that's been a really tough issue to work on, especially with recent news, train derailments and things. And so I think that working with the Community Development Department to create kind of zoning processes is really important. And I think that not just zoning industrial areas or semi-industrial mixed-use kind of areas in places that already need investment, tends to push out the community members that you were talking about, pricing out of the community, right? So thinking through not just where investment is needed, but what type of investment is needed in those communities. It's not always industrial, raise buildings and create new opportunities. So being really thoughtful about it is important.
Great answer. Alderman Clegg.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, I'm very impressed with all your answers.
Thank you.
I know this is the third interview you've had to have, so I truly appreciate you coming up here and talking with us. Hopefully this is the last one you have to have. Yeah. And as I said, I really love all your answers. It was really good. And one of the things that I've always learned, if we don't move forward, we're moving backwards. And I'd like to see that you kind of, in essence, said that. You have big shoes to fill with Director Cummings. But the nice thing is you'll have him here to help you, guide you. But it sounds like you already have your own ideas, which is good, because it's always good to get a fresh perspective on it. One of the things that Director Cummings has always had to, I don't want to say suffer with, but has had to tolerate, or however you want to put it, is lack of staff. I heard you mention that you had 11 staff underneath you.
There's less here.
That is 11 more than you're going to probably have now. So how do you feel that you can move forward in this? And knowing that you also have parking enforcement underneath you, which is a different perspective. And I can tell you that when it comes to the parking enforcement, you will see a lot of myself and Alderman Lopez knocking on your door saying, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. So I'd love to hear how you're going to deal with not having staff. Because you brought some brilliant thinking, but you said your staff, and I heard you say your staff. So
yeah, so I built the capacity of my organization. When I started, it was just me and one part-time person. So I've built that over time, and I think that the way that you get things done when you don't have staff is you build good partnerships. It sounds like we have some great partners with the Downtown Association and the Improvement District. So that there's really great partnership opportunities, even with private development. So I think building really good relationships and partnerships and working together is the way to make things happen and move forward in a timely way. And then I would say I'm currently on our parking committee in my current community. It's the one and only thing that everyone can complain about equally. But I think that I've learned way more about parking than I've ever needed to know, and will continue to share my knowledge. And so I think there's a real opportunity too here with what we have in the community. So I think it seems like there's a new app potentially, or that was just installed, the new app for the parking.
yes.
And there's enforcement, and there's parklets and all sorts of things that will affect parking going forward, and especially as the community continues to build and there's more and more residents in the downtown area, that will continue to be an issue. But I think there's lots of opportunities to do management in a good and equitable way.
Alderman Clegg.
Thank you. I like that answer. One of the things I'm not sure how much knowledge you have of this is we've done a parking study, and one of the things that myself and Alderman Lopez are dealing with is dense residency with no place to park. Some of the homes are very, very old and may or may not have driveways, or they have one car driveways, and nowadays no household just has one. Even people with only one person sometimes has two vehicles. So that was kind of what I was alluding to, as well as the parking management aspect of it. And I'm not going to put you on the spot to ask you to come up with any plans or anything like that. We'll get you later on that one. But one of the things that I liked your answer was that you stated very specifically that you would use outside sources like the, downtown improvement and so on. And I think that's important to engage, and I've seen Director Cummings do the same thing. I think it was brought up when it came to the Performing Arts Center, engaging those other groups to see who could pay for what so that we weren't necessarily knocking on the door of the taxpayers again. So that's one of the things that you will need to be very creative, and it sounds like you have wonderful ideas. And Madam Chairwoman brought up the comment about you're working with, diverse individuals, and you will find throughout the city, we have pockets here and pockets there of different types of people, and you have to adapt to that area. Many of us like to, I think it's just human nature, not in my backyard kind of type of ideas where you're going to have to be creative and get them to understand how this would be helpful. So I loved your answer as to how you brought the community together for that, the initiative that you had planned. So thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you any questions, just some observations and some suggestions. I know that you've been questioned by a lot of the senior city staff, and I have a lot of respect in their opinions, and they seem to be very high on you. One thing as far as the economic development, the background that you have, or any economic development person has, is probably just as valid on the West Coast as in the East Coast. I've spent an inordinate amount of time, probably more than I wanted to, on the West Coast. And while the end results of the development may be a little different than here, the basic principles on how to get there are the same. So I'm impressed with that. I would suggest that coming forward that you do, like Director Cummings does, is you listen to people and you formulate your decisions based on the inputs. If you have questions, you rely on the other directors to give you guidance, and I think that will work out fine. I'm very anxious to have you take over this position so that Director Cummings has some life left.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed by your personality because you're very outward. You can talk to people. You can relate. And again, Tim's been that way. He listens, and doesn't always agree, but you'll find that. As far as Amherst Street is concerned, I'm sure that Alderman GOV and myself will have a lot of questions and concerns about Amherst Street. So another suggestion I have is you want to ensure that you keep your cell phone free, because right now Director Cummings' cell phone burns up every 10 minutes because he's got so many hats, he's going bald.
It's not the end of the world.
So I'm impressed with your background. I'm impressed with the fact that you have experience across the country. As was mentioned before, there's sometimes people here want to stay in the 50s. Trust me, I was around in the 50s, and I don't want to stay in the 50s.
Okay.
But that experience from nationwide experience is very valuable, because you've seen what happens and what works and doesn't work in other areas of the country, and you can bring that experience and relate to this position. So I look forward to you joining our staff, and when it comes to budget, don't let Tim dump the whole budget thing on you. You're too early in the campaign.
Okay.
But I look forward to you serving with the city of Nashville.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just end by saying thank you for your time. Your resume was impressive, but your answers were incredible. It was a
Thank you.
breath of fresh air to have you here yourself. Looking forward to having you serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next committee is the Business and Industrial Development Authority. Scott McKnight, a new appointment, term to expire March 28th, 2026, 33 Franklin Street, Nashville, New Hampshire, 03064.
Madam Chair and
Mayor?
members of the committee, first I want to apologize to, or express my appreciation to Mr. McKnight for waiting a long time. Maybe we should have invited him up earlier, I don't know. But Mr. McKnight, I've proposed him for the Business and Industrial Development Authority. He is head of Triangle Credit, a very substantial downtown lender and business partner. They've been active in the downtown for many years, now on Franklin Street, and they've been in that location for 30 years, maybe a little more. And we are looking for Mr. McKnight's kind of background on the downtown, or on the Business and Industrial Development Authority. As you probably recall, they were very involved in the development of the riverfront landing, and we are hoping to get them involved in the mill yard development, particularly the parcel where the police currently have their training facility, but which will be, training facility will be moving out to where the Public Works Department was on Riverside Drive, and possibly the adjacent parking lot and some of the other mill yard properties. And Mr. McKnight's experience as a lender and his general experience downtown will certainly give a good perspective to the future projects undertaken by the BIDA. He does have a master's in business MBA from Rivier. He has an accounting degree and obviously a lot of banking and business experience. So I will turn things over to Mr. McKnight and thank him for waiting. I wouldn't have been surprised if he just left and told us to, buzz off or whatever, but he didn't. So I really appreciate that. And I turn it over to Mr. McKnight to tell us a little bit about himself and of his interest in the BIDA.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Scott McKnight, and a little bit about myself. First of all, thank you for considering me to serve. I started at the credit union in '93, left for a year and a half thinking I wanted to go to public accounting, and knew I was on the wrong side of the desk, and I came back and I worked at the credit union since that time. So I have a couple of degrees from Rivier. I've been very involved in Nashua and have served on many of the or had the opportunity to serve many different roles. I was on the or as trustee of the Hunt building when we were redoing that. That was quite the project. It took a little bit longer than we had thought, but it got done. And I have served on Great American Downtown. I was the treasurer, then I became the president, and that was an interesting job. But I've served on also with the Salvation Army here in Nashua as finance chair. So those are just some of the different roles that I've played or done over the years. My company, we were started in 1939 here in Nashua by Nashua Corp. We're very fortunate. We outlived Nashua Corp. And we're very much dedicated to the community. We do what we can. We're involved in just about everything that we can afford, whether it's on a monetary basis or just showing up and help putting on an event. That's the way we've always done it. That's the way we do it. We're very involved in all the different communities. We really believe in, the southern counties, communities in New Hampshire, but we're definitely based here in Nashua, and we do a lot in what we can do. We speak 23 languages at the credit union, and a very high percentage of our employees that are from different countries. And so definitely I think this is a good fit. I think I can bring whatever talents I have to the committee. I look forward to, if approved, serving on the committee and bring the lending experience that I have, but also the dedication on, serving all the different communities, whether it's the Spanish-speaking community, the Brazilian community, the Indian community. So there's a lot of different communities, I think, that we serve here, and we have, bring whatever talents I have to it. So I think that's a little bit about me. Hopefully that's good.
Are there questions from the committee? Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I want to commend you on your comments about the multilingual status and attributes of Triangle Credit Union, because as you are being interviewed for the BIDA position, I mean, that just shows savvy. I spent years as a job developer trying to convey to employers that a bilingual staff member wasn't like somebody who wasn't good at English. It was somebody who is good and able to engage a whole nother population. So the humanitarian in me appreciates the equity, but I just think it's common sense. And I have seen firsthand that Triangle Credit Union applies that because I've been a member of it, and I've worked in partnership with them on a number of community events, including the job fair that the Continuing Care organizes. I think that your leadership at Triangle Credit Union reflects very well on you, and it's something that both the community should be proud of and we should be taking notes from in terms of the work that BIDA is going to be doing. So I'm very encouraged by that. I appreciated the existing breadth of knowledge reflected on your resume, participation with Great American Downtown and Hunt Memorial. So I think you're going to be a great fit. I'm looking forward to it. And I think the mayor made a great pick here. So thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you very much for coming forward. I think your experience obviously will lend well to the Business Industrial Committee, and I look forward to supporting you.
How's that? Thank you. We'll take up your nomination.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Application to license hawkers, peddlers, itinerant vendors license.
There is none.
Appointments by the mayor.
Can we read them all together or separate?
Let's do them separately.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following appointment from alternate to member to the Downtown Improvement Committee, Philip Sconsis, with a term to expire February 14th, 2026.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following new appointments to the Performing Arts Center Board of Trustees. Lindsay Rinaldi with a term to expire February 14th, 2027, and Philip Sconsis with a term to expire February 14th, 2026.
The motion is to recommend final passage. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following new appointment, Liz Hannum as the Economic Development Director with an indefinite term served at the pleasure of the mayor.
Motion is to recommend final passage. Any, yes, recommend appointment. Yes, words. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I forgot to say aye, but I mean aye.
I don't think I did either, but aye.
I just got distracted the last second I blinked.
Sharing is distracting. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following new appointment to the Business and Industrial Development Authority, Scott McKnight, with a term to expire March 28th, 2026.
Recommend following appointment. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following new appointments to the Ethics Review Committee, Roger Weissman with a term to expire March 14th, 2026, and Dave Tenza with a term to expire March 28th, 2026.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, everyone. We'll see you at the next Board of Aldermen meeting. Unfinished business.
There is none.
New business resolutions.
I'd like to make a motion for final passage on O-23-048. Exempting games of chance used for state licensed charitable gaming from the amusement devices article in the Nashua revised ordinances.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes, just to review, this ordinance had elements in it that were from past Nashua, if you will, back when the clubs used to have one-armed bandits in the back making money for the establishment. And the wording in there, it was meant to keep that type of arrangement out. What we have today is we have machines that look like one-armed bandits, but they're not. They're charitable gaming machines. And the change in the ordinance is to just exempt charitable gaming organizations from this $500 machine fee, plus the fact that the police department would have to confiscate them, which, believe me, they don't want to do. So this is just to change the language to exempt them from these exorbitant fees.
Alderman Lopez, then Alderman Clemmons.
Could I just ask Alderman Dowd, through the chair, I don't know the vintage definitions or whatever. Is the one-armed bandit just a slot machine?
Yes.
Alderman Dowd?
Okay, just make sure it's not some kind of more complex thing.
Yeah.
Because he used to have a pull down.
I don't gamble, people.
I don't either. All
Obviously.
set, Alderman Lopez?
Yes, appreciate it.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, this is good legislation, because, you know, the charitable gaming facilities in Nashua give a lot of money back to our community in the way of, to the nonprofits. And so to tax them a $500 per machine is kind of, would really be silly. And, you know, the idea behind that ordinance, because it was put in, I believe, back in like the 80s or 90s, was to prevent basically illegal gambling from happening, as Alderman Dowd had stated. So now that we have legal gambling, these parlors are good places. They benefit the community. This is something that we, in my opinion, should be doing and exempting them. I don't think for a second had I known that it even thought that had been, I would have brought this ordinance up sooner, you know, so I'm glad that it's being brought up, and I thank Alderman Dowd for bringing it forward, because to me, it's common sense.
Any additional discussion? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I guess I have a different point of view. I think that I'm wondering, you know, my first thought is why, you talk about charitable gaming, which is another word for gambling. It is true that that by law, in order to operate, they have to donate or partner with the charity and donate, I think it's 35% of the proceeds to that particular charity they pick for that week or 2-week period, which does benefit local nonprofits, and it's been a great boon. But there's 65% of that money that isn't going to charities. I don't know how much goes to the state, and I don't know how much goes to the operator. And that 35% is only applies to certain of these machines. This new horse racing provision, none of that money goes to charities. That money goes all to the operator and the state?
No, no, you have a charity for HHR machines.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
You have a charity for HHR machines, correct? The historic horse racing machines, those have a charity. So there's a
there
charity
is
to
part of
table
it that
games
goes
and
to
there's a
charity?
charity to the slot machines, yes.
Okay.
How many arms do those have?
What's that?
None.
Trying to catch up.
Alderman Jettie?
So I don't think it's unreasonable for, the city to assess a fee for these machines. The Nashua, I'm not sure, I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, and I would suggest to the committee that you hold this and that we get more input about this, and maybe this is good legislation, but I'm wondering, what are the other cities, how are the other cities handling this? I looked very quickly at Manchester, and they have, their fee, I think, is $2,000 per machine, not $500. So I'm wondering, what is Manchester doing? What is Concord doing? What is Dover, Portsmouth, Keene? And other places, Salem, what are other cities in the state doing? What is the breakdown, of the money that the operator, gets, and how much the state gets? Because to my knowledge, the city is getting nothing from these machines, except an argument could be made that there's the rooms and meals tax on the beverages and the food that's served goes to the state, but the state returns part of that to the city. But there's no direct, and I guess you could say that, they occupy real estate, so they pay a real estate tax, but, we just saw in the current revaluation that, I've had, commercial property owners say to me, gee, what's the problem with the revaluation? My taxes went down substantially. And so we all know, we've all heard about how the residents are carrying more of a burden of the property tax. And so I would encourage the committee to look more deeply into this issue to determine, are we giving up an opportunity to generate more revenue that would lessen the burden on the residential property tax owner, too quickly here. So, maybe this is good legislation, and maybe it's the right thing to do, but I would like to have us get more input and get a lot of these questions answered, before we move it. So, thank you.
Alderman Dodge, do you want to reply?
Yes, as was mentioned, there is a over 8% piece that goes to charities. 35% of the revenue goes to education, and the state has allowed these to take place to relieve having to send money to the cities and for education and charities, and it's fully embraced across the entire state. Billiards alone has donated $15 million to charities here in Nashua, which we couldn't possibly touch in our local budgets or the state budget. And I think it would be a huge disservice to postpone action on this. It is solid legislation, and both of these establishments in Nashua went out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these gaming machines for charity, and it would be a disservice to take this money out of the charities' pockets. And so I advise that we fully pass this tonight.
Alderman Lopez?
I'm unclear exactly how we're taking money out of charities' pockets, given that the percentage of the millions of dollars that they've donated was earlier identified as only a portion of the revenues being generated. I was confused as well in reading the legislation that the fiscal note just says there's no impact. So to me, either that's because there's none of them in the city right now, and I will defer to Alderman Dowd or somebody who actually gambles who might be able to tell me. Is this because this fee is blocking these things from happening, or how is there no fiscal impact? That confuses me, because I would imagine if we're suddenly making a tax break for charitable gaming, and the only gambling we can do is charitable gaming, that would be all of these machines are no longer being taxed at $500.
Alderman Clevens?
I can answer that question, I believe. It's because we're not collecting the fee currently. So the machines are here, but we're not collecting the fee because the ordinance, this was not the intended purpose of the ordinance. The intended purpose of this ordinance was to prohibit, to make it really difficult to have an illegal gambling parlor set up in the back of some restaurant somewhere. So the police and the city clerk and government never intended to collect this money. So there is no fiscal impact in the sense that if we pass this legislation, we've never collected a fee on it, we shouldn't collect a fee on it. So the fiscal impact is zero. If we want to keep the ordinance on the books, I would imagine that the fiscal impact would be positive in the sense that now you would have to have somebody go out and assess the fee onto each one of these businesses, count the machines, basically give them a bill. I don't think, in my opinion, that that is a worthwhile endeavor, because the money that we are getting from these gaming facilities to go to our local charities is worth more than going in and taxing them and saying, we want to do this for whatever purpose we're going to have here in city government. It's not going to offset taxes. You're talking about a couple hundred, maybe a couple hundred machines times $500 is not going to offset anybody's property taxes. And the other thing is, it would be a detriment to the people who work there and the people who set these things up to then have to go in and, or I'm sorry, in the city side, to then have to go in and do some kind of tax assessment on this. To me, it was not the intent of the original ordinance, and so therefore we should pass this to just exempt them. I strongly urge the committee to move forward in that direction.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think I have some answers to some of the questions. I've been in contact with one of my colleagues from the State House who is on the Board of Aldermen in Manchester. And his exact words were that at one point we did have a $2,000 before we had charitable gaming in the HHR. Now it's zero. So they aren't charging anything per their machines. I'm not saying other communities, I can just say for Manchester. And this particular historic horse racing was passed in 2021, and it's House Bill 626. For anybody who wants to go and look at it. And they do discuss the 35% and the 25% and so on. I believe 35% has to be distributed within the charitables, and 25% goes to the organization that the licensee is, I think as they call it, and the remaining goes to the state. And we always hear that the state of New Hampshire pays for everything from schools to roads with a lot of syntax, you know, with the Keno, with lottery in general, with gaming. with alcohol tax and so on. So a lot of this does still go to the state. There is also a small percentage of, I don't know if it's 3 or 4% that the organization gets to hold back for the administration cost as well. But it's pretty kind of separated out. I think you would be doing a disservice to these businesses who brought these in. And on another perspective, we're looking at another organization trying to come into the city of Nashua at the Pheasant Lane Mall as well. So we would have 3 gaming facilities here in the city if that were to pass, or if, you know, they do continue with their perspective. We'll be hurting all of these organizations if you put even a nominal fee of $50. I know I've walked into the Thirsty Moose, and I have sat down at one of their machines. They have quite the Lucky Moose. I've sat down at the machines, and they have quite a few there. It would add up to a lot of money if we started charging for each one. And it's the same thing, I think, with billiards. And if the one that is looking to come into at the Pheasant Lane Mall, I think they're looking for an even bigger unit. While that would be nice money to come into the city right now, as I think Alderman Clemens already explained, we haven't been collecting it, so there is no impact. To collect it would mean revenue. We can't argue that. It would mean revenue, but I don't know to what end and to what harm we would be doing these businesses. And to compare ourselves to Manchester, right now they're not doing anything. They've done 0. They got rid of their $2,000 fee, from what I've been told. So, thank you.
Alderman Gavea?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, to my understanding, when other communities put in those fees, or the fees for the slot machines, it was for the reasons that Alderman Dowd stated, and it was to keep out illegal gambling. Were those ever used or enforced? I couldn't tell you, but at least to my knowledge of being in the industry for a little bit of time, that was kind of the status quo. And just to put it out in public record, and no longer employed by a charitable gaming facility, so I don't have a conflict on this vote, but just I was around when these were starting to come into play and the laws were passed, so that was at least what I remember when we were going through the whole process. Was there was these fees, but they were never truly enforced to anybody. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez, then Alderman Dowd.
I just want to say that the explanations kind of are clarifying in my mind, because I'm very much unfamiliar with this particular area. But my concern, as was presented earlier, would be if we were offering tax breaks to businesses that were disproportionately impacting taxpayers. If we can do something to ameliorate the skewing of the property tax burden as it has been shifted to private citizens, then I will do any revenue-seeking mechanisms we can, especially for people who have it to spare. It doesn't, from what I'm hearing, though, it doesn't sound like we ever accounted for this, and this wouldn't necessarily provide as much of a benefit as it would a deterrent from charitable gaming places to maybe have less machines available or reduce their offerings. So, I mean, at the moment, I'm not really inclined to do anything to oppose this. And I think Alderman Clemens' explanation about the fiscal note makes a lot of sense, because I don't usually see the legal department completely miss the target. So they must have known that and understood that we haven't been collecting any revenue in this particular area. So it's a little easier for me to kind of let it go. But like I said, I do think charitable gaming is important, emphasis on the charitable part. And I am aware that it's a little bit skewed away from the house, you know, in terms of the donating part, but that the house has to take all of the overhead as well, and nonprofits don't really have to do much to generate revenue. So it's as equitable as it can be at the moment, I think. I was just asking questions because I'm very unfamiliar with this particular industry, and if there is a way to reduce the tax burden on property owners and individuals trying to pay their rent through landlords passing their taxes, then I would definitely be in favor of that.
Alderman Dowd?
Again, it was pointed out by the owners that they have the cost of the building, they have the cost of buying the machines, they have the cost of maintaining the machines, they have the cost of electricity, and staff. They have significant costs, so it's not all profit that's going to them. It's covering a lot of the expenses. And every charity, every penny taken away from the overall profits is money out of the charities because it's split by percentage. So to me, all the money that we give to charities is a huge impact to the charities here in Nashua. And I know they all support this ordinance.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that, I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, and one of them, I mean, I certainly don't know, how the, how the money is split up and how much it costs, to buy these machines, maintain these machines, et cetera. I cannot imagine, I may be completely wrong about this, but I cannot imagine that Delaware North is going to decide not to expand Boston Billiards because they're going to have to pay $500 per machine. That's, less than $2 a day. How much do those machines, how much money do those machines generate? I think it would be good to know, what the answers are. And, I don't, I think, why can't the committee take the time to, have those people come in and talk to us and tell us, this is, these are the dollars and cents, rather than have us guessing about, these things, what the original intent of the ordinance was. Why isn't it if it's not being enforced, why not? I'd like to know if we've been leaving money on the gaming table, so to speak, all of this time. So I don't see why, this can't wait a few weeks to get these answers. But, I'm not on the committee. It's your decision. I'm just pointing out that, $500, maybe that sounds like a lot of money to you. Compared to what those machines generate each day, each and every day, I doubt that it's significant. And I doubt that it's going to be, that the business plan of these people who operate these facilities, are going to, are so tenuous that this kind of a fee would make them leave town and go somewhere else. I just don't see it happen, but I don't know. But it'd be nice to have them come and talk to us and hear what they've got to say and hear what other people from the state have to say. But, thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yeah, I don't share any of those concerns. I don't have any of those questions, and I don't really particularly want them to come in and explain anything. I think that charging a fee is ridiculous for those machines, so I'm going to be voting to move this forward this evening.
Are you moving to move the question?
Nope.
Okay. Alderman Dowd?
This is a private company, and we don't bring the restaurants in and ask how much they make in a profit for a salad. I mean, why would we do it to this? I also want to point out that these fees were announced to these companies after they invested in all the machines, which is totally unfair. And I think, for the pennies we're talking about, it's important that we give them this relief, and all the people I've talked to are totally in favor of this, and I think we need to move this forward. We don't need to bring them in and ask them business questions. It's, for all intents and purposes, none of our business. And the state has thoroughly reviewed this, and the state has allowed these machines to be in place for the reasons that were stated, to support these charities and education. And for us to be taking anything out of that is, to me, not fair.
Alderman Tebow?
No.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just as an added piece of information, the city of Manchester removed their $2,000 fee when Keno got brought in. And that was because Keno machines actually kind of fell close to similar to what these machines are considered by their definition. And from what I'm gathering, I do not have any information from any other community, but I don't think other communities are charging per machine towards these things. So I would, while, you know, anybody would love to see more revenue coming into the city in any way, shape we can, I think we would be singling out one particular business type. And I'm not sure that that's a slippery slope we go down. So again, I'm not on this committee, but I think when it gets to the Board of Aldermen, I will be voting in favor of this, so thank you.
Motion on the floor is to recommend final passage. Is there additional discussion? Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, as a committee member, I would entertain making a motion to table, but I do not think it will pass. So I would say maybe instead to people who might be interested in this, particularly there's only like 3 companies that do gambling. Maybe just send us communications describing like what the impact would be for you, so that we have that before we bring it to the full board. Because, Alderman Jettie can absolutely bring this up in discussion in the full board, and he would be rightfully pointing out that we just went forward with it. So maybe the compromise is the community passes information in a written format rather than coming up and having to do any kind of question and answer or anything like that. It might even be better for them since we hold our meetings during their operational hours.
We just let them open until 2 a.m. Do they have non-operational hours? Sorry, just kidding. Alderman Bay.
Just to throw it out there, the lottery compliance does put together reports that are submitted, I believe, every month or 2. I'm looking at the one from January now, and looking at the numbers, the NHCG LLC, the owner-operators of the Lucky Moose that has the HHR machines, just as a rough thing, their handle was 5.9 million, which would be the amount gambled. The total commission was about $500,497,000, with 43,000 of that going to charity, and then 80,000 to total state revenues. And that was the 3rd highest in the state, behind 2 other owner-operators in the state. But that's just kind of the rough numbers are all out there from these reports. You can go and find them. They're easily available too.
If I could reply to that.
Alderman Lopez.
To anyone who's gonna send a communication, I would be looking for like, how many slot machines do you have that you'd get taxed on? Because that for me is, I get the revenue generating part and the charity donating part, I got that, but I don't know how many. Are there like 4 of these in the back room, or is there like a whole row? So I would think that would be probably important too, just to understand the context of like, what is the burden we'd be placing on these businesses?
All set, Alderman Lopez.
Yeah,
Alderman Tebow.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I haven't said anything about this. I've been just kind of listening. It sounds a lot like what we were trying to do for private restaurants to be able to have their space outside without charging them a fee. And what ended up happening with that is we ended up sending it back to a committee. And I don't want this to happen to this if it ends up going to the Board of Aldermen, and then this gets sent back to this committee. I think we've talked about this enough, and I think it makes sense to me that why would we have a private company come in and tell us what they need to do? This ordinance was not set up for the way the business works today. These horse racing games are completely different than a slot machine, and it's charitable, like Alderman Clemens said. The money we make, we could never give to these charities through the city. So if we're taking away money that could go to these charities, or we're making businesses cut down on some of the things they do to generate money for these charities, then where's that extra money gonna come from? It ain't coming from the city, because I'll tell you right now, we ain't gonna generate it. So it's a good thing for these businesses to operate the way they do so that these charities can get this money and to continue for this to go forward. And if we're nickel and diming these places, they're gonna just say, why don't I go to another community? The Jacobs or Delaware North, whatever they are, they could just say, you know what? We'll take this to another city. They don't have to go and put it in South Nashua where they're thinking. They could just take off. Why wouldn't we want that money to stay here? And to charge them what I think is a petty amount would kind of be I don't know, a slap in the face to a business that's trying to give back so much to this community.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I just found out that there's no city or town in the state of New Hampshire charging any fee for these machines for charitable gaming. I also found out that Billiards has 500 machines now, and they're expanding, would have more. Now, there's also the other charitable gaming in the back, poker, roulette, and all that other thing that's allowed by the state. To me, that would be more of a concern. We don't charge them anything for that. So, you know, this was something that was dropped on them after they made the investment, and A, it's not fair. B, there's no other city or town in the state of New Hampshire charging this, so why would we charge?
All set, Alderman Dowd? Alderman
All set.
Jettie?
Yeah, could, through you to Alderman Dowd, what is the source of this newfound information?
Alderman Dowd?
The person that's the lobbyist at the state level that's familiar with all of the charitable gaming institutions.
And,
Alderman Jettie?
yeah, to the people who say, you know, why, this is private business, it's none of our concern how much money they're making, et cetera. You know, you're the one who said that charging them $500 is going to make them make a decision to leave town. I'm just saying, you know, how,
I never said that.
I'm not talking, some other people have said, or somebody said, I thought it was you, had said that it is unfair to charge them this fee. And so I was just saying, you know, it would not, I don't think it would be that onerous or unfair to charge them the fee, because I think, you know, they're making plenty of money, and you know, and the people who are saying that it would discourage them from staying in the city, that they would go elsewhere. I just can't imagine that that these businesses would leave the properties that they've invested so much money in, these machines that they've spent so much money to pay for, that they would leave because of a $500 fee. That's all that I was saying, and that's why I was saying, you know, if you think that's the case, then have them come and show that to us. But, you know, thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
I move the question.
The motion is to move the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion before us is to recommend final passage of, lost my page, O-23-048. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion for O-23-050 to recommend final passage, amending the general assistance guidelines to permit updates to the financial standards by the Welfare Department.
Mr. Mack, are you here to discuss this? Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Bob Mack, Welfare Officer for the City of Nashua, here to speak to the legislation to update the financial standards. The financial standards are the maximum payment levels, which are used in determining applicant eligibility for issuance of general assistance through the City of Nashua Welfare Department. Each municipality is required to adjust the financial standards based on its own economic characteristics and current market conditions. Now, the typical time frame for updating these financial standards is every 12 months or so, or as there are any significant changes to the economic and market standards within a community. The general sources that we use to make these adjustments are the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, residential rental cost survey for fair market rents for the city, the U.S. Department of Agriculture for food allowance standards, and the Consumer Price Index for cost of living adjustments. These reports oftentimes come out at different times throughout the year. So this process, slight change in the language for adjusting the financial standards brings us in line with what some other communities do as well, and also to be in line with the model welfare guidelines through the New Hampshire Local Welfare Administrators Association. And it basically can protect the city by codifying that the most current data is used in determining what our financial standards are and how we're making those determinations and issuing assistance for the city. As we've seen significant increases recently in rental costs over the past couple of years, the cost of goods and services, food, gasoline, et cetera. It's important and it's required by law that we are issuing this assistance in line with those current market standards. So this change in the language would just kind of allow us to be more efficient and make adjustments as needed, as in a quicker fashion as those things take place in our community.
Awesome. Questions from the committee? Alderman Lopez.
So last Tuesday, the mayor mentioned the expiration of a voucher program that had been in existence for, I think, the last 2 years since the pandemic. And so I wanted to point out that it seems like there's going to be less resources and more people likely to need, the welfare assistance supports. And I wanted to get your opinion on that, while also clarifying that I don't have a problem with allowing us to pay enough to meet the needs. I know in the past, people have maybe said, well, why should we keep raising the amount of rent that we're gonna pay just for market rate when we can do 3 people payments of whatever number versus 1 person? And it's like, what's the point of 3 people not being able to pay their rent and 1 person actually being able to maintain their housing? So I follow the logic that we need to make sure that we're able to give enough assistance to actually achieve the goal. But do you think we're likely to see continuing increases in utilization rate as other programs that might have offered supports decline?
Mr. Mack?
That's a good question, Alderman Lopez. I think we have started to see an increase in requests, primarily for rental assistance, as the ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance Program, has been exhausted for many people. The program for the motel assistance for adult-only households has ended this past weekend. We haven't seen a tremendous amount of requests coming from that, but time will tell. Some people have been able to save up some resources while their rent or their shelter costs, if you will, in the motels has been covered through this program. So we're going to wait and see how that plays out. The motels are a little different than rental assistance because it's a different process. Motels, if you don't pay, they can immediately move you out of that room. With rental costs, there's more of a process and an eviction process that takes place. So they have more time to seek alternative assistance. As mentioned, the cost of rents has gone up significantly. I think over the past year, we've seen anywhere from a 15% to 30% increase in rents for 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units within the community. This, again, is based on the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority survey that they complete every year. So these aren't just numbers that we come up with, but it's what we're actually seeing in the market, and that organization does some significant research on. So I think we have seen some increase in utilization. I sent out my report earlier today to the full board. We've seen some significant increases over the last number of months in that shelter and rental cost line in particular. Hope that answers your question, Alderman Lopez.
It does, thank you.
Okay.
I actually have a question. So it sounds to me like this is just allowing you to be a bit more nimble in changing these welfare guidelines. I know you've come before this committee yearly to ask for those updates. You mentioned that there's allowance for you to change those guidelines based on what's going on in a particular city. What types of things do you use to evaluate that? Is it anecdotal? Is it, you know, you said that the housing authority only comes out with once a year. So how are you
Correct.
adjusting based on like what's happening last month, this month, next month?
That's a very good question. A lot of it is based on what we're seeing coming into the office. When we assist a client with a rental payment, we require a rental form to be completed by the landlord or property owner. They fill out what the rent amounts are, how frequently they're being paid, et cetera. So whether it's a weekly rent or a monthly rent, et cetera. What we've seen is higher rental costs on those rental forms. It is in line with what the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority has pushed out. Over the course of the last couple of years, a number of housing conferences that I've been able to attend have also discussed this. It's a statewide issue that the rents are increasing significantly. I think it was mentioned earlier with the candidate for the Economic Development Director position, the challenges in finding housing, 0.4% vacancy rate within the city creates a significant housing issue, particularly for lower income individuals. So, and we continue to see these higher rents. Another concept that I heard about at one of the housing conferences was this concept called renting down, where people that are making a decent living due to the cost of buying a house decided not to buy a house, and they decided to rent an apartment at a lower cost to them, which then in essence takes that rental unit away from people of lesser means and lower income. So it kind of pushes that downward. So there are some interesting trends that we've seen over the last few years, particularly with the rental market and the economy.
And we've also seen that there's not the housing, the higher end housing to move out of is what people used to think were starter homes. And so that middle housing also has really had a big crunch.
Yes.
Not to go too far in the future here, but as you're seeing these increased costs, knowing that the budget is coming up, do you have concern about your budget being able to cover the amount of people who are coming in for help?
Yes.
Great answer. We'll talk about it in the budget.
And we have considered these increases as we're planning for the upcoming fiscal year for the budget.
As much as you can. All right, thank you. I saw hands everywhere. Did you have your hand up?
I did not.
Oh,
Tyler
okay, I
did.
did.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question. So the bottom piece of the legislation, I believe, makes sense. The one thing I had a question on was actually at the top where it removes the mayor and board of aldermen from approving these changes. I guess I would like to know more of the rationale behind it, because I know there's a soon-to-be director and another director behind who would love to have some wiggle room where they don't have to come to the board of aldermen. But I was just wondering where that kind of comes from.
Good question, Alderman. I think it goes to what the chair had pointed out, to be more adaptable and being able to adjust as needed. We are required by statute to operate at current market standards, to assist at current market standards. So this would just kind of eliminate some of the process, if you will, the need to go through the bureaucracy, if you will,
Sure.
of getting this done. It is, again, based on current different surveys that come out. So these numbers aren't things that we're just kind of making up. It's what we're seeing in the market, what these organizations are surveying. And so we're just also following what some of the other communities have done with this particular aspect of general assistance. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Mr. Mack. One of the things that I've heard from my constituents is that they can get a voucher or they can get assistance, but there aren't landlords that are taking them because it's not enough. So we're kind of, to Alderman Lopez's point, you give out 3 vouchers that can't be used.
You wasted 3 vouchers.
You wasted 3 vouchers is absolutely correct, versus being able to help maybe one person find a home or find a place to stay. Is that also one of the reasons for trying to move this forward as quickly as possible so we can help as many people in the end?
Mr. Mack?
Thank you. I think just a point of clarification, our vouchers are they're like promissory notes, promises to pay a certain amount of rent, generally to prevent an eviction from taking place. I think a lot of the vouchers that you're referring to are Section 8 vouchers that are like housing subsidy vouchers, housing choice vouchers that are administered through HUD or the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority that are monthly supplements to someone's rent. So it's a subsidy, and I think one of the things that we're seeing is people with those particular vouchers, those promises for that subsidized rental payment every single month, are struggling with finding apartments to rent because of the vacancy rate. So I think they're kind of 2 different things, if I understand you correctly. But it is a significant challenge with those folks finding the apartments to rent, in many instances because their income is lower income, and some of those tenants don't have good rental history, so it's a challenge. They may not have a good reference from a landlord, so those are additional challenges, which is why we've had conversation as a community and at the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care, and also at the Housing Trust Fund level about landlord incentives and programs like that could incentivize landlords to accept those vouchers. Now, some of what we can do is we can assist someone with one of those vouchers to move into an apartment because we can pay first month's rent. But as the rents adjust, according to the market, we have to be able to cover what that actual cost is for that applicant. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and may I follow up? Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you for that clarification. And again, maybe I'm going off base here, but even speaking to some of the landlords, some of the assistance and so on that they're getting, and while that is a promissory note, they're finding that they can't afford to pay that little, even though they're getting some assistance. So they've gone up at the other end of it, and they're getting, because of this low, they're actually getting more money for those particular things. And so I do want you to have as much flexibility. Again, I'm not on this committee, but I think having you be able to change things on the fly and not have to go through a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day process to come here and get our blessing, I think is a good idea. So thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman.
Any additional discussion? Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I just want to plug the Continuum of Care meeting on Wednesday for all the aldermen that are attending. They meet the first Wednesday of the month. They're at 9, right?
9 to 10:30, yes.
9 to 10:30 up in the auditorium. I highly recommend going to this one particularly because there's a bunch of really, really interesting information being presented. But this is where all of the housing-focused organizations are tackling this issue, and it's a very good thing for us as aldermen to be literate in.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. The motion is to recommend final passage. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mack.
Thank you.
New business ordinances,
There is none.
tabled in committee.
Well, I think we were expected to take something off
So
originally.
028 stay on the table.
Right.
There is a motion to remove 022 and 31 from the table, but as far as I understand, we haven't gotten any information
Can I
that we had postponed it for.
ask a question?
Alderman Tebow, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director Cummings is back there. Can I ask him a question on this? Because I believe Director Cummings runs the assessment department. So,
Technically, to ask him a question, we need to put it before us, but
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you gotta take it.
So
We should
can
probably
take it off the
Take it
table
off
so
the
we
table,
can?
yeah.
sure.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to take
022, 031.
022-0311 off the table, increasing the veterans optional and all veterans tax credits.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
It's
Now,
031.
we recommend final passage.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend final passage of 0-22-0311, increasing the veterans optional and all veterans tax credit.
Okay. Now it is before us. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you. Director Cummings, thank you. So I had wrote to Jen Zinn, I believe she's in your department, right, assessing? About a week ago, and I haven't heard anything back. So the information we were trying to get back, and maybe you could help us with this, is how, what people, I guess, or veterans have applied for this tax credit. Some information so that when we do bring this when we go back to bring this off the table, we'll have some information to debate and decide on whether we want to go forward with this. Is that something you could get us by, like, maybe the next personnel committee?
First, I want to defer to Alderwoman Clee because I see that she has her hand up, and then I'll be able to answer your
Okay.
Well, technically, I can do that.
Yeah.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, for hearing me out. I did speak to Ms. Zins personally, and at this point, they don't have any applications that would qualify under this. And part of it is because we just changed the ordinance to allow it. And the other part is, she said, the lack of education. She firmly believed, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, that it will take at least 1 year to get a full feeling as to what the application process would be. They have until, I believe, April 15th in order to be able to apply for this particular thing. Personally, I've been getting the word out to my constituents that this does exist. I've had a few of them that said to me, oh my goodness, do I have to reapply? And the answer was no. No currently receiving veteran has to reapply, but those that meet the new definition that we just passed, I think within this last month, is just technically gone into effect here for the city of Nashua. I have reached out to other communities to find out what they're receiving, and they said the word just hasn't gotten out, and they're kind of waiting on that. So again, I don't want to put words in Ms. Zinn's mouth, but I did speak to her last week, I think it was.
Now, if I may, Madam Chair.
Director Cummings.
Thank you. I have spoken to Jennifer Zins about this specifically, and she has confirmed for me that she can't tell you how valid or good the data is going to be, but she will have it after April 15th. So, I would suspect that you can have something post April 15th, which you then can use to make some decisions on.
Alderman Clemmons, then Alderman Tebow. Oh, do you want to follow up on your?
Yeah, that was my
question?
original question,
Sorry.
so you, I guess, thank you. You can tell Jennifer, thank you for getting back to me. And so I think at this point, if we get any information at all by the next meeting, we should take this off the table and pass it. And, to Alderman Jetty's point, who's always trying to get fees out there or ways to save the taxpayers' money, here we're trying to give the taxpayers a credit. So why don't we look at this and try to pass it and give veterans a credit, a higher credit? I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't do that. So, especially if we're gonna have to wait a year for this to really take hold. Well, what are we waiting for then?
Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, I mean, part of the point of tabling this was to get an idea of how many new applicants there was at this point in time. Because we wanted to pass this legislation so that all of the applicants who have applied year to date or up to April 15th would get the benefit of the additional money. So it's kind of frustrating to have a non-answer. To know how many applicants there, have come in thus far. So with that said, I have no problem moving this forward and giving people the extra $250. It's gonna cost the city some money, and it is what it is. Veterans are worth it to me.
I agree with you. I think the discussion we had and the reason it was tabled is we were concerned with the new definition of veteran, that we make it a flood that we haven't had in the past, and how we would handle that if it were, you know, thousands of people who decided to apply. I'm not sure how I feel knowing that it may take a while for us to even figure out what the impact of this will be. Obviously, don't think that we should be foregoing giving veterans a credit, but I do have concerns that this could, you know, in a year, people really wake up to it, and now we're dealing with a lot more people applying, and then we have to figure out how to move the money around. That's all. Alderman Clee.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. First, I want to clarify, when we say the city can do this, it is not the city that will be picking up this extra fund. It will be the remaining taxpayers who do not get this credit. So let's make that very clear. We are not saving taxpayers' money. We're taking a finite group of individuals. And I have been working with veterans and military since I was 17 years old. I have not stopped with that. I believe that we should do as much as we can with veterans. I have numbers here that can show how much better Nashua is than almost any other community. Specifically, I will bring up Manchester. Technically speaking, based on 2021 figures, Nashua gives $2.9 million in veterans tax credits and exemptions. Manchester, on the other hand, gives $1.3 million. And these are based on 2021 figures that are on the DRA numbers. And when you calculate that up, now we can look and say, okay, well, that added 250 based on the 2021s. We're looking at maybe $650,000. That doesn't seem like a whole lot of money, but we don't know what that new base is going to be. So that is my concern. If I said that, you know, this is going to come out of the city's budget and the city would be paying for that, I would have a whole different feel of this. We just increased the elderly exemptions, which I think was the right thing to do, and the disabled exemptions and so on. We are walking into unknown territory. We are now looking at active duty. We are looking at reservists. We are looking at guardsmen. And these are those that have been in service for at least 4 years and own property here in the city. As I stated, the reason why Nashua has so many veterans is because we give the highest credits to the most people. So we cannot compare this to what my colleague from Ward 5 had said about trying to give back to that. It is not coming out of the city coffers. It's coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. And we need to be clear on that. So thank you.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I mean, we did it for the elderly, and we did it for the special needs and stuff. So that's taking away from other people. I mean, it's taking away from the taxpayers as well. So I know it's different. I know it's a little different. And I'm sure I'm going to get schooled in why it's different, which I know. But we still are taking away money to give to the elderly. So it's fine. I mean, if people want to table it, or it's fine.
Madam Chairwoman?
I'm just gonna say something.
Okay, sure.
I feel like the frustration I have is that we tabled this to get some more information and we didn't get more information. So I have that frustration. I think there are some really simple ways we could have answered this that haven't come forward to us. I am sure there is somewhere a database that tells us who's activists or active duty, reservists, and veterans living in our city. I am sure that happens. So we could absolutely figure out a general sense of what that is. We have no list of how many people are actively serving in the.
May I answer that, Madam Chair? Yeah, I asked that very specific question. I can't get that answer.
Really?
Correct. And that is one of the major frustrations with this exercise.
Good to know. I also think that the comparison to disabled or elderly is a little bit different, because it's not like we're suddenly saying if you're elderly, if you're 55 now, you can get the credit, and we don't know what that's still the unknown. So I don't think it has anything to do about deserving or undeserving. There was questions that were asked that weren't answered. So I'm for putting it back on the table, but I will listen to the rest of the committee's decisions on this. Alderman Clee.
Thank you again, Madam Chairwoman. To compare this to the elderly and the disabled exemptions is incorrect, because the reason why we increased the exemption was not to give them more credit. It was to equalize the value of their homes. Their homes went up by a certain amount, and that exemption just exempts a certain portion of it. So truthfully, I'm sure the elderly that are getting a credit, or the disabled that are getting a credit through the exemption, meaning that their taxes are less, just probably put them at level that they were before we increased the value of their home. So it is a completely different thing. And when you all, if I may, Madam, thank you. When you all tabled it, once you tabled it, I could not speak anymore. And I did want to speak to say to you at that point in time, tabling it to April 1st, while I understood the want so that you could get it done by the close of the tax year, so that the people could get the credit this year. I tried to say, but it was tabled, so I could not say it. What I tried to say was, it is not enough time. It is not enough time to get the message out. It is not enough time to know what these numbers are. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not the same as the exemption. All that did was exempted value of their home to basically bring them to where they were before. One of the things that we added to that elderly exemption was to make sure that we added the means test that would be equal to the value of their increase in Social Security and so on, so that they did not get thrown out by that means test and so on. We are talking completely, not even apples and oranges, we're talking, apples and roast beef. So it's really, really different in that respect. It pains me and it breaks my heart to even go against this. And I spoke the last time and said the only time I spoke on the floor of the House was when this HB 1667 made it to the House floor, where we had to talk about it. And one of the things I have learned through that process, and this is talking to the Department of Veterans Affairs, this is talking to DOD, they don't have an accurate number as to how many veterans. Do we know how many Coast Guards live in the state of New Hampshire? Probably. Do we know how many, National Guards? Probably. It's very difficult with active duty because this is their home base and their home state. And one of the things that we also do not know is if a veteran is deployed, owns a home here, normally they have to live in that home in order to get the credit. But if they've been transferred overseas and still own this home, they are still going to get the credit, but they're not living here. And that complicates things as well. I think that number is going to be small. We also talked about those that go through basic training that will now qualify for it because they didn't make it through basic training for whatever reason that was. I think those numbers will be extremely low if we see anybody that would fall in that category. But the thing that bothers me, the active duty in general, I say, those numbers will be low. It's the guards. It's the Coast Guards, it's the National Guards, it's the reservists. As long as they've been in service for 4 years, they now qualify for this, just like the active duty do. And I have been on the phone with people from DRA. I've been on the phone with people from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I've been on the phone with my counterparts throughout the state of New Hampshire. And I think we are being generous and we are being kind to want to do this for veterans, but I think we're not seeing the big picture. And to do this, and I please do not be insulted by my saying this next door, but to pat ourselves on the back because we've done it, we're doing it on someone else's dime, not ours. So again, thank you for letting me talk.
Can I ask a question through you to Director Cummings?
Of course.
Thank
Director
you.
Cummings.
My question is it fair to say that if we had seen a flood of applicants to the assessing office for this particular application, that you'd be able to relay that back to us?
Madam Chair?
Director Cummings.
Yes, I feel confident that I could report back to you the foot traffic relative to all of the exemptions and credits. I actually know that the assessing office is extremely busy right now working through all the various applications, elderly, disabled, and the veterans credits. That's what's taking up a bulk of their time. I could happily give you that data. What we can't do is forecast the new definition.
No, yeah, and so if I could continue,
Alderman Clemmons?
I just don't, I understand. I guess where I come down on this is like the state decided that that's what the state was gonna do. They decided to expand the definition of this. We have the veterans tax credit anyway. So those who fall into that category are going to be able to take advantage of the exemption, whether we increase this amount or not. The increase obviously is going to have an impact on the remainder of the taxpayers. I understand that. But so wouldn't the increase of those who were not part of this before and now currently are coming to apply. That would also have a fiscal impact as well. So the question is whether or not we're comfortable with an extra $250 on top of what we give per those new folks in that definition, or whether we want to keep it the same or some other number in between. I'm okay with going up all the way. I understand that is going to shift the tax burden to others, but I think our veteran community, I think, it is a worthwhile community to put that towards. And so for me, I'll vote to move this forward this evening.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First rhetorical question, who's patting themselves on the back? And second, if it's going to be such a burden on the taxpayers, why don't we just cut it then instead of raising it? I mean, if it's going to be that bad, right? I mean, using that logic.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will defer to one of the members, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, my bad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Alderman Clemmons. I'd be fine with passing this out right here tonight. I think it's one of those things where it's worth it, and it's a tax credit. I have received calls from the ward asking why we're not at that top range of what the state will allow us, and I know there was, I was just talking with director the other day about it with a resident, and they were able to tell me, well, the veteran was at his max benefit, but technically it could go higher should the Board of Aldermen allocate more money to it and allow it to go higher. So I have heard about this, and it's sat on the table for a while. I was happy to sign on as a co-sponsor. I think it's still a worthwhile piece of legislation, and I would be all for passing it outright tonight and bringing it to the full board.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. As I go through the DRA and looking at 2021, to see who in fact has, put up to the max, the $750. I look at places like Alton that has 338 people. I look at Deerfield that has done it, and they have less than 200 people that get it. I look at Danville, who has less than 200 people are getting the $750. I go to Dover, which is a little bit higher than that, and between the two, 7228 and 7228B, they're looking at about a little over 1,000 that are getting it. When we look at Nashua, we have currently, I think 2,000, and this is 2021, I'm not even looking at this year's. We have 2,491 people that are getting this credit of $500. And while I do agree that anybody that applies is going to get the 500, so we're only increasing it by 250, we don't know, and I hate to use Alderman Dowd's, we don't know the unknown unknown. But that is, the truth of the matter is, we would not only be increasing the 250 by almost 2,500, and this is, again, based on 2021 numbers, we would then be giving an additional 250 to anybody that would now exist. That number, for all I know, is 5. That number, for all I know, is 5,000. I seriously doubt it's that much, but I don't know what that number is. We don't know what that number is. And while, again, I would love the idea of being able to do it, I just have a very difficult time asking taxpayers who are already, we're hearing from them. And I will tell you, when I sent out my email relative to explaining what this was, I got 2 veterans who called me and said to me, I don't want to see it go up. And I said, well, you cannot accept it. And he goes, well, can I just keep the 500? And I'm like, no, it's all or nothing. You get the 750 or you get the 0. No veteran has to take this credit. Nobody's going to force them to take this money, but if they do apply for it, they will get the 750. Both of them, their concern was to make sure that we were giving the appropriate credits to the disabled, and we do. So for surviving spouse, we give $2,000. For service-connected, totally disabled here in the city of Nashua, I believe, let's see here, I think we have 4. And that means they pay $0 in taxes. And again, I'm looking at 2021 numbers. Service-connected disabilities, they're 118 and they're getting $2,000. So it's not like we're not taking care of our veterans. We are taking care of our veterans. And I understand, I saw the emails that came through that said, bring it up to 750, bring it up to 750. That is wonderful. And my comment about patting ourselves on the back is that we do look good when we help things for veterans. And I know I'm repeating myself, so I apologize for this, but we're doing it on someone else's dime and not our dime. That's why I made the comment about it makes us look good because it doesn't cost us anything here in the city. And that's the reason why I meant it. I did not mean to insult any particular person that put this through, and I apologize if that's what, so Alderman Thibault, I do apologize if that's the way you heard it. It was not what I meant, but I was wrong for probably saying it that way. I just keep looking at these numbers. So let me just give you some real numbers here. Manchester gives, I said the 1.3, and Nashua gives over $2 million. We give, we are a community of about, 93,000 people, and they're a community of over 117,000 people. Just think about that, how much less they give. If they pushed it up to 750, it might not necessarily affect them the same as it's going to affect us. So I think we need to look at it. I would love to see you table it. Truthfully, I'd like to see this wait to come back next year. I understand everybody wanting to do it while this board is in place because we don't know who will be here next year. But I think we're wrong for doing it, and I have to ask you to err on the side of caution. It's not like we're not doing things for veterans. We are doing it. And if you just go into the DRA and look at the numbers and look at the comparisons, it's quite amazing what we pay compared to, and I'm looking at a like city of Manchester. So I know I feel like I'm just kind of talking to the wall now. I think many have already decided what they want to do, but it pains me to say this, but when I'm looking at that, we're over double of what Manchester does in this particular thing. And Manchester, by the way, has 0 fully disabled, so they're not giving 100% tax-free to any veteran. We're giving in you know, a lot. It's just, it's amazing what we do. I said the same thing about for our elderly and our disabled. We do more than other communities do, but I did agree in the end that yes, we had to bring that exemption up to meet what we did as far, well, not we did, but what values happened on it. This one, we don't have to do just for the sake of doing it. And thank you again for listening.
Alderman Thibault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, again, I guess this goes to Director Cummings through the chair. So are we told here that there's no more information we're going to get for a year? Or if we table it a month, would we have enough information to then make an educated, or 2 months or 3 months? Like, can you give us a kind of like maybe a guide on that?
Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I could come back to you for your next meeting with some data, and I think it would be good data for you to have. I don't think you'd need to wait a year I think, and you're not gonna like this actually, but I think it's probably gonna be a couple of years actually, before you can actually do any type of trend analysis, which is what you're looking for, so you have some sort of confidence. Ultimately, I just want you to have the appropriate data so you can make an informed decision, whatever decision that may be. I think, to answer your very specific question, Alderman Tebow, I can have that data for you, what we do have for your next meeting. It will be post April 15th, so I think we can definitely accomplish that.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you. Do you have an opinion on this?
I believe that is directed to you,
Yes, Director
Cummings.
Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not able to give an opinion as of yet. I think I need to do myself the service of studying the issue. And I say that because when I provide a recommendation, I want you guys to rely on it. And I want you to be able to have confidence in it. And I wouldn't be very confident in the answer I would be about to give you this evening. As you all know, I take a very conservative approach. I tend to be very judicious when it comes to data collection and analyzing data. And so what I do know is, because I've been at this game for long enough, once you giveth, you're never going to taketh away. So when I know that you do this, you're going to need to do it for the following years. And I really want to make sure I have an understanding as to what that potential exposure will be for you. And because I don't want to put a value to it. The value to it really shouldn't be paramount. It's just making sure you understand so you can steward the financials of the city appropriately. So that's really where I would be coming from. And if you give me a little time, I will come back to you with a concrete recommendation.
Alderman Tebow has a follow-up, and then Alderman Clements.
So as much as it pains me to take my personal opinions out of this, because son of a veteran, Vietnam veteran, and a grandson of two World War II veterans, I think it's important to support them, but I also want to make sure we are getting the information that will help us make a better decision. So despite how I feel at the moment, my personal opinion is maybe table it another month. I don't think it will change anything if we wait a month to see what data we can find out. I mean, it doesn't change anything for a month out, but that's what I'm thinking.
Are you moving to table?
I am not, but I can. I'd like to hear what
Alderman
Clements
Clements.
has to say.
Yeah, the only thing is waiting, if we don't do it tonight, then it's not gonna happen for anyone for their tax bill for this year. So if we're all okay with that, then, but we have to, that's the reality. We either move it forward tonight at the higher amount and we get it done at the next Board of Aldermen meeting so that it takes effect before April 15th, or it won't take effect until next year. So that's just the deadline that's the decision we're making tonight. The unfortunate thing was, when I made the motion to table, I was hoping that we would have this data so that we could make a decision tonight so that we wouldn't put anybody in that position. So it's frustrating to me, and because of that frustration, I'm going to vote to move this forward and do it anyway. Because I don't think that it's fair that we don't get the information that we ask for. So I'm gonna move it forward regardless.
Alderman Clegg.
Thank you. Director Cummings, through you, Madam Chairwoman, may I ask a question? Thank you. Director Cummings.
Why don't you just come sit in the corner?
Yeah, you really should just grab a seat.
Seriously.
Up, down, up, down, up, down. My question to you is it, do we have to, they have to apply by April 15th, but do we have to pass it by April 15th for them to get it? Will the DRA reverse that, not allow us to give the credit? Or do you know this?
I don't know off the top of your head, and actually, and to further confuse the situation, I was under the impression it was an April 1st deadline. And I could be misinformed on that part, but that's why I will need to double check and get back to you, but I don't know.
May I follow up, Madam
Yes.
Chair? Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that the property assessment is as of April 1st, but I just didn't know whether or not the credits or exemptions or anything else like that. I've been trying to look at on the DRA as far as the regulations and so on, but it doesn't state that here. So I think that's something that we need to know, because if it was April 1st, we've already missed that deadline. If it is April 15th, I understand where Alderman Clemens is coming from, and I do respect his comment on that, but I think that's something we need to find out.
If I may, Madam Chair, part of what's driving me to the April 1st was I was very cognizant of the fact that we needed to re-adopt the veterans definition, the veterans legislation that we're talking about this evening by April 1st. And I thought that was for some reason, I thought that was the deadline for this as well. But again, I would need to double check that.
Alderman Lopez.
I think, and actually I would ask the chair through the chair to Alderman Clemens, we can take it from the committee, from the Board of Aldermen, if we do find out over the next week that, if we don't pass this in the next Board of Aldermen meeting, then we're not going to get it in time for people this year. So we could still table it and then extract it from this committee at the aldermanic level if there was an urgent enough need. Just double check me on that though, before I screw everything up.
We can take it from committee. Alderman Clemens.
Yes, that is true. I was under the impression of the April, just to clarify, I was under the April 15th because at the meet, and I can't remember when it was tabled, but I think it was sometime back in October, but at that meeting, so Alderman Jettie just pointed something, and it said that the applications are required by April 15th, and I believe that the thought was that if you had an application in prior to that you would get, or, you know, the conversation at the time back in October was that if we passed this by April 15th, anybody that had applied would get the increased benefit. So whether that's true or not, that was what was discussed in October. Again, even if that isn't the case, I still support the legislation. I still would move it forward.
Director Cummings? did
Yes,
you want to reply?
again, I defer to whatever the previous conversations were. I wasn't party to any of that. What I would offer is prior to your next full Board of Aldermen meeting, which I think is scheduled for April 10th, April 11th. Yeah. I can have the most up-to-date data for that meeting if you'd like, just with the caveat being that it won't be complete, you know? And so then you can decide however you wish if you would like to do it then.
Is there any further discussion on this motion? Alderman Clee, are you adding anything new?
Yeah, kind of. All along, I've been giving you the 2021 data because that's all that's on the DRA website. But when I look at the fiscal note on here and I look at the 845,000, I remember when I spoke to Ms. Zins and I think Corporation Counsel, about that number, and that number was basically taken from what we had at that point in time, which was close to 3,400 veterans. So when I've been giving you numbers, just to keep things in perspective, I've been looking at less than 2,500 numbers, and now we're already up to 3,400 numbers, and that does not add those other ones. So while the new things that are coming in, it's gonna be $500 a piece. Everybody, that 3,380 veterans that made this $845,000 will be getting the 250 plus everyone else. So I just want you to keep this in mind when we talk about this. We're not talking about truly insignificant numbers. These numbers will grow. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Alderman Lopez,
I actually want to make a motion.
what's your motion?
I move to put it back on the table.
Motion is to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries. I can't remember the number of this legislation. O 2231 is back on the table. Public comment. We have exhausted the public. Nobody's in the audience. General discussion. Any remarks by Alderman? Alderman Tebow.
Thank you. I know it's late, and I've been watching Lights, Camera, Polka up there on the screen, which is a fantastic show if it's on our local TV. But honestly, you know, it killed me to put that back on the table. But, you know, I do trust Director Cummings, and with him not being able to give an opinion, that concerned me. So I just, doesn't mean it can't come back, and it doesn't mean we can't do it in the next Board of Aldermen meeting. But, you know, it killed me to do that. The other thing I wanted to say, and I know it's late, but I thought the opening of the National Center for the Arts was absolutely incredible on Saturday. Beautiful facility. I did want to mention one comment I saw online that the only one I could take before having to shut off the comments is, look at all the elite people in Nashua, elitists. And I said, wow, I'm an elitist now? This is awesome. But they were $15 tickets for people. So I don't think it was elitists. It had all kinds of different performances. If you liked symphony, it was there. If you liked ballet, I can cross that off my bucket list now. They had West African drumming, which was probably the highlight to me. That was awesome. They did a great job on that. And they were the most lively of the group. But it was great singing. Kids were performing. You know, it was unbelievable. And I think it's going to serve this city for a long, long time. You know, the mayor said 100 years after we're all long gone, he'll still be there serving the city. So thank you to Director Cummings and Rich Land and Mary Lou Blaisdell and Deb Novotny and everybody else that worked on it. It was a big time coming, and it was great to see.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. I want to echo what Alderman Tebow said. And one person that did not get recognition during all of that is a person who's also been part of it. And she'll probably get very, very upset with me for bringing up her name. But there were a lot of people that worked on this committee and that did so much. But Judy Carlson was right there with the, you know, and I think it was just an omission that her name was not mentioned, but she was there on all the committees. She was there doing fundraising. She worked tirelessly for it. And the truth is, she was there long before I was, because there were pre-meetings and pre-studies that were done, and she was part of all of that. So I want to thank Ms. Carlson for all that she did as well. So thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are closing down this meeting at 10:18.